It's 6 o'clock in the evening on Tuesday, October 13th, 2020. This is the regular meeting of the Colerain Township Board of Trustees. Mr. Baker, would you please call the attendance roll?
Mr. Rajagopal?
Here.
Mr. Unger?
Here.
Mr. Waller?
Here.
It is 7 o'clock in the evening.
You said 6.
It is 7 o'clock in the evening, October 13th. Next item, Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me in Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And please remain standing for a quick moment of meditation. And as I've said at the last few meetings, there's an awful lot going on in our country right now. And I would ask that everyone out there just pray for America and things continue to get better, and as they always have. And just keep our country in your prayers and thoughts. Amen. And the next item is from the Fiscal Office.
Thank you, Board. I would ask the Board for approval of the minutes of the September 22nd meeting.
I would motion that we approve the minutes from the September 22nd, 2020 meeting.
I second it.
It's been motioned and seconded. Is there any discussion?
None.
I sent one correction, a spelling correction. I should pick that up.
That's correct.
Okay. Is there any other discussion?
None.
Hearing none, Mr. Baker, please call for a vote.
Mr. Rajagopal?
Aye.
Mr. Unger?
Aye.
Mr. Waller?
All right.
Motion carries. The next item.
Yes, sir. Good evening, Mr. Unger, Board of Trustees. This evening we have two presentations. The first is a proclamation recognizing Blust Motor Service for 100 years of service in Colerain Township. Mr. Unger, I believe you have a copy of the...
And I would like to go ahead and read that. Proclamation recognizing Blust Motor Service for 100 years of operation. Hamilton County, Ohio. Be it proclaimed by the Township Trustees of Colerain Township that, whereas Blust Motor Service was established in 1920, is a one-stop shop for quick, dependable truck care, and whereas Blust Motor Service services a variety of vehicles and equipment, performs Department of Transportation inspections and repairs, and sells new and used vehicles, and whereas Blust Motor Service has been a stalwart member of the Colerain Township business community and is located on Colerain Avenue, just north of Compton Road, and whereas Blust Motor Service is a major sponsor to a variety of community activities and groups throughout Colerain Township, and whereas 2020 marks the 100th anniversary of operation by Blust Motor Service Incorporated, and whereas we thank Blust Motor Service for their passion and commitment to serving the community and congratulate them on their 100th anniversary. Therefore, be it proclaimed that the Colerain Township Board of Trustees does hereby recognize October 13th, 2020 as Blust Motor Service Day in Colerain Township. And I would like to motion that we approve this.
I'll second.
It's been motioned and seconded. Is there any discussion?
None.
Congratulations. The nerd in me wants to say, my gosh, 100 years ago, we were just getting over a pandemic.
And is there any other discussion?
Yeah, I'll add a comment. It is a great honor that you guys come and accept the award. 100 years is a long time. What it tells the family loyalty to our township, your integrity of your family to support our township. And we thank you so much for all the service you have done for the township.
Thank you, Raj. And with no other discussion, Mr. Baker, please call for a vote.
Mr. Rajagopal?
Aye.
Mr. Unger?
Aye.
Mr. Waller?
Absolutely aye.
And I didn't know if a member of the Blust family wanted to step up to the microphone and make a comment or two. And feel free to remove your mask and introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Gary Blust. I'm part of the third generation. We just want to thank you very much and appreciate for all the work we do with you, with the police department and the fire department, all the times they keep us safe out there on the roads when we're cleaning up the accidents. We really do appreciate. what you've done for us. We do appreciate being in this township.
Well, that's great to hear, and we're certainly glad that you're here.
All right, well, we'll try to stay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And we'll have a copy that you can either take it to him or
Sure,
Get
yeah. Has everyone
we'll
signed?
get Mr. Baker to sign that. And
Sir? Mr. Baker, with your signature, this will be official.
and congratulations.
Thank you.
Our next item will be the Colerain Township Department of Fire and Emergency Medical Services, a value-driven and mission-focused organization. And for those that have not met you yet, Chief, if you would introduce yourself again.
Good evening. I'm the new Fire Chief, Alan Walls.
There's a whole bunch of viewers out there that are meeting you for the first time if they missed the last two meetings.
And hopefully I'm as technologically advanced as I think I am here.
Well, I've got you over here.
Oh.
If you just want to tell me when to click, I can click.
And if you want to adjust that mic up just a little bit, Chief.
Actually, we'll have to,
Oh,
it's
okay.
over there.
Oh, okay. Is that different from the one? Okay. Okay. Got it. Okay. Let's see here.
I can't see anything.
While we figure out our technology, what I want to talk about this evening real quick is what a value-driven and a mission-focused organization is. And so this is a presentation that I've given to the majority of the men and women of the Colerain Fire Department, but I also think it's important for the elected officials, the public, and others to understand where we want to be, what we do, and how we do things. And so
Here.
when we talk about being value-driven and mission-focused, we have vision statements, we have mission statements, and we likewise
Yep, nope.
You want to use this?
That's, yeah, it's the connection is the problem. There we go.
Turn it off and turn it on again.
Blow on it.
Johnston. While we're waiting, good luck to all those kids out there tomorrow that are taking the PSAT. Get to bed early, the PSAT.
Would that be over at your,
No, it's everywhere. I think it's nationally normed, yeah.
now do they let them take that online?
No, that's in person.
Okay.
Looks like our presentation of the Colerain Fire and EMS is about queued up.
there we go.
You want to adjust that mic up just a little bit? There you go.
All right, we can go to the next slide then. And so passion and purpose. Passion and purpose is important in an organization, individuals. And if we look at something that was written here eons ago, we'll see some important things there. Serving, then serve, teaching, then teach, encouraging, then give encouragement, If giving, do it generously. If it's leading, to do it diligently. And if it's to show mercy, it's to do it cheerfully, and sometimes to those who may not even be deserving of it. And so, with that, what we really get down to there is a simple term that I like to use, and it's called making a difference. It's what we do, we make a difference. And making a difference is as simple as picking up a piece of trash next to a trash can and putting it in the trash can. It's folks in the community banding together and cleaning up part of the township, and those things become contagious as people see other people making a difference. And so when you look at what we do in the organization, our singular goal is A, to serve, B, to make a difference. And so next slide, please. We have vision statements, mission statements, and values. And so we want to know where we're going, hence a vision. We want to know what we do, the mission, and how we're going to do what we do to get to where we want to be, which is our values or our moral compass. And so together then, the vision, the mission, and the values provide direction for everyone in the organization to know where we want to be, how we're going to do it, and what we do. And likewise for the community. Next slide, please. And so some vision statements here. A vision could be a singular focus, such as making Colerain safer, one home business at a time. I've prepared some vision statements for the organization myself in terms of where I would like to see us be in 6 years. And the thing about a vision, though, is once you reach that vision, then you need a new vision. And so will we reach this vision in the next decade? Perhaps. And if so, we'll have a different vision. But for me, as the chief of the organization, it's conceptualizing and implementing what our future is going to look like. We're not just the fire department. We haven't been just the fire department for years. And so we have to embrace our heritage and likewise continuously evolve with the ever-changing landscape. We need to reframe what we do, identify our future culture, and then allow that to drive the organization to be agile and proactive. You sometimes hear the terms best practice, sometimes you hear the term next practice, and sometimes you hear the term past practice. Past practice is just that, what we used to do. Best practice oftentimes become what we used to do. And the important thing then is to be proactive and always look for the next practice. Data. I can't speak enough about the importance of data. We have to be able to inspect it, clean it, transform it, and model that data to make important decisions about what we do and how we do it. Likewise, we need to have a healthy workforce, be it physically, mentally, or spiritually. And so we need to champion a comprehensive health and wellness program. We need to build a network of partners that helps us do what we do, address organizational sustainability matters. The levy that we're faced with right now is to sustain what we do. In order to not impact the taxpayers more and more and more, we need to find proactive ways then to minimize that impact and either maintain or enhance the level of service that we provide. Technology. We must advance the use of technology to improve our service delivery. And sometimes it's as simple as a cell phone. And you think, well, everybody has a cell phone. You would be surprised sometimes how important a cell phone with a GPS could be on an emergency call when we're trying to pinpoint or locate a particular address. Just a month ago, I set long distance and actually screenshotted a house that I knew that the address was that they were looking for and sent it to the shift commander and said, it's that house. And I had to follow up with, it's that driveway, but nonetheless, technology. And then finally, 3 important words here: diversity, inclusiveness, and belonging. We can never achieve success if we're not diverse, inclusive, and belonging. And so when we talk about belonging, we should all feel like a school of fish in the sea, not like fish out of the sea. And so, next slide, please. What we do then, it's our mission statement. It explains our value. It's specific and actionable. We can also create goals. And so we have a clearly defined mission statement here in the township. And we can flip to the next one there. And our mission is here: first-class all-hazards response, socially responsible programs, citizens, businesses, and visitors, engaged team of professionals that values involvement in our community. And you've seen some of that recently in terms of some things that we've been involved in, and we've always been involved in. And so, Important words there to me, though, that engaged team of professionals who values involvement in our community. Next slide, please. So strategic goals, then, we can break that down, being adaptable, proactive, innovative, and focused on continuous improvement. Once again, the next practice, the next practice. People strive for the best practice. The only problem, though, is a decade later, they're still talking about the best practice, which was a decade ago, not the next practice. Providing non-traditional programs that benefit the community at large, the QRT, fall prevention, community risk reduction, smoke detectors, and things of that nature. You'll see here, enriching the engagement of all employees. A disengaged workforce is a workforce that is unproductive, not happy, and will never help the organization achieve far-reaching success. And so we need to enrich the engagement of all of our employees. And then finally, enhancing our alignment here with the community that deepens our solidarity and connection for the common good. Now we have what we do. Now we need to know how we do it. And those are our values. We have organizational, we have humanistic, and we have action-oriented values. And so organizationally then, when we're looking at that mission and vision, we do it with those, that being customer service, teamwork and trust, mutual respect, and growth and nurturing. And we can flip on to that one. Our next set of values then are humanistic ones. We need to be compassionate, we need to be committed, and we need to have integrity. And finally then, our action-oriented values, we need to be brave, we need to have courage, and we need to have honor. And that's not just in the setting of what we do, it's sometimes around the fire station where somebody might say, we can get around to that in a few minutes. No, there's a right way, and there's a better way to do things, and it's right now, not a little bit later. And so it's not just in the context of what we do in an emergency scene, it's being adults and being engaged and responsible. And so when you put all that in the funnel there, being value-driven and mission-focused, and the organization as a whole, what you see at the bottom there is community. And what you notice is a capital U, and that's what it really boils down to, the organization being in unity with the community in order to achieve great success and in order for all of us to make a difference in our community. And that's it. Anybody have any questions?
I think that's a wonderful presentation and a good continuing introduction of yourself to the community. The very first slide, the passion and purpose, it's critical that our folks that work in the fire and EMS want to be there and know why they're there and enjoy the call of service to go out and resolve big problems and small problems and everything in between. I also think a lot of what we do with the fire department is the preventative stuff, going around and checking businesses and smoke detectors and other things to help prevent. You might walk into a business and say, hey, why don't you fix these 3 things? And you'll probably end up never calling us if you correct 2 or 3 little things with your business. And I think being proactive is a big part of our fire service also. It sounds like you've got a good grasp of where you want to take the organization, and I think you're off to a great start.
You can learn a lot about somebody by just asking them why they're there. And when they say, I'm here to serve and I'm here to make a difference, that's what I want. If they say that they're here to get a paycheck,
Then maybe the market needs to take them somewhere else. But no, you want to be there, and I don't think anybody in the organization is going to be a millionaire at the end of their career. It's not that type of work. So I don't know if any of the other trustees had any comments or.
Sure. Thanks, Dan. Chief, that was a great presentation.
thank you.
In this presentation, what impressed me, you really pounding on the best practice. That's very critical. You can do all day long what you're doing, but is it a best practice? And that is very critical. I'm big follower of that best practice based on the evidence-based programs. And also you mentioned about, you emphasize on the strategic goals. You know, you can have practice, you can do things, but you don't have strategic goals, you're like a runaway train, you know. But strategic goals, which Jeff Mills, the other leaders of the department, it's moving forward in 2021. I think that is a great thing. I really admire your work and focus towards this, this base, the principal leading the department. Thank you.
We don't know where we want to be if we don't know what we're going to do, and if we don't know how we're going to do it, we're a ship without a rudder.
I'll just add to what the other two trustees said. There are two words in there that I think pretty much, my interactions with you kind of sum up my, I guess, perception of you, and it's integrity and honor. And I don't know that you would expect to see that in a presentation oftentimes because it's unmeasurable. But I will tell you that, without trying to embarrass you, you kind of have a leadership that makes people want to do the right thing. I mean, they don't want to let you down. I see that. And I think that's, you're as boss, you would agree, I would guess, that people don't want to let you down as a person or as a professional. And I think we're lucky. And I'm so thankful that the departments have gotten involved with the cleaning up. You guys have done so much outreach in the last 2 weeks. It's been amazing. I'm a fan. You're doing a great job, and I appreciate this presentation because I appreciate, I think, the consideration you gave it. I mean, it comes from the heart, and it comes from your experiences, and I do appreciate that. And thank you so much for your service, and I feel so good having you at the helm. Thank you.
Well, once again, it's a humble and a privilege to work here for all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief.
Our next item is citizens' address. We have received 1, 2, 3, 4, looks like 5 different citizens' address, and I'll go ahead and read them. And the first one comes from Mike Camella. I am writing to request that the Colerain Township trustees use their limited home rule powers and adopt a resolution that makes it illegal to operate dirt bikes and all-terrain vehicles on roadways in Colerain Township. At the September 8th Colerain Township trustee meeting, Dan Unger and Matt Wallert both commented on a dirt bike ATV riding event that originated in Northbrook and then converged on Colerain Avenue around 2 p.m. on Sunday, August 30th. Dan Unger stated that he was with a group picking up litter and saw 100 or so dirt bikes and four-wheelers, and that some were on the sidewalk. Matt Wallert said that the emails he received about the event were kind of scary, and that the event scared a lot of people. There is no reasonable or lawful purpose associated with the operation of these off-road illegal vehicles on our streets. Thank you, Mike Camella. And the next public request for speaking is from Alec Dorn concerning barking dogs. Hi, my neighbor's dog barks all day, and I've tried reaching out to the police to deal with it, as well as local humane societies. No one seems to care that my sanity is on the brink, and my neighbor is violating noise violations by letting this dog literally bark all day. It does not stop. Who in Colerain Township is equipped to deal with this person who is breaking the law? Thanks, Alec Dorn. And we do have a county dog warden, and maybe that we could respond to Alec with that information. The next one is from Donna Price concerning Halloween. I've been trying to figure out if and when Colerain Township is having Halloween this year. I've seen a couple of local news apps skip right over Colerain Township. Not sure if that was an oversight or if COVID has canceled that. It is on the agenda this evening, Donna. And the next item is from Chad Ballard. Dear trustees, I am writing about the Capstan House. We all know which one. As you may know, the house has been condemned by the Board of Health. This was a short-lived victory for the neighbors on our street. The residents are only allowed at the property at certain times to clean up the property, and only certain people are allowed to be on the property. Well, like usual, they are breaking the law. They are at the property 24/7. They are still living at the property, and the township knows this is happening. At what point will they be removed from the property and trespassing charges be filed? They are not cleaning the property up. The township is and at the taxpayers' expense. They haven't paid property taxes in years. They average 40 to 50 calls for service a year. Those calls cost taxpayers money. These aren't nice people just having a hard time. These are drug users and criminals who could care less about the law and their neighbors. My neighbors and I won't be happy or stop putting pressure on the township and county until this house is boarded up. We will even gladly buy the plywood. How do we raise children around here when they ask us why they are getting away with breaking the law? My kids are constantly finding needles from their drug use. We watch them buy drugs daily, and it's only a matter of time before another major crime happens at this property. Why even waste time asking residents what they want with the imagined Colerain survey if you won't do anything about the issues when they are happening? Hopefully the township can step up and remove these people and make our neighborhood safe again. If not, I will be addressing you guys again in 2 weeks. Chad Ballard. And hopefully we can get an update on what the status of that property is. The next request to speak is from Kathy Moore, and I'm going to hand this off to Matt and allow him to read it. She would appreciate answers from the trustees, although I would like to point out that these documents that were sent have a stamp on them that says approved October 13th, 2020, and tonight's the first time I've seen these, and this board has taken no action to approve any of these documents. Did you put this stamp on here, Mr. Baker? Did you put this stamp on here, Mr. Mills?
No, sir.
Okay, so just to let anybody know that would request these, this is not something that the township approved, and I'll hand it off to Mr. Wallert.
Okay, there are a number of questions. I'll just take them one at a time. I forgot the mic. That's the first time ever. Software services order form. What is the purpose of this? Don't we already have a program for employees to enroll in benefits online? Why do we need to involve another third party for another $500? Is that, Mr. Mills, do you want to get that, or do you want to get yours at the end?
So these were submitted today at noon, past the deadline. I did not, I didn't have time to look
Okay.
this stuff up, but I can do whatever you'd like.
Okay.
Yeah.
Agreement between Colerain Police and Northgate Mall. How many stores are actively open in the mall? I don't know the answer to that, and I don't know that anyone here would know the answer to that. The agreement begins October 21st, 2020. If passed, I believe that is the date on the agreement. Chief, is that right? Yes, sir. All right. Does have officers been working the mall between March and October 20th, 2020? I believe that, and again, Chief, please correct me if I'm wrong, that they have not, it's been private security from March to October 20, March to October 13th, I guess.
I believe we started back about 2 weeks ago. It was
Okay.
private security between March and that date.
Okay. Does the township agree that all insurance required to adequately cover vehicle, personnel, and equipment used by the township in the provision of selected services will be provided by Colerain Township? I think that is the case in the contract.
Right, it's our existing insurance that the police department already carries.
So we don't go out and get, for instance, another policy. It's under that same umbrella policy.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Township provides automobile liability insurance for hired, owned, registered under township's name and non-owned vehicles, including agreement liability with a single limit of liability not less than $1 million per accident for bodily injury and property damage combined.
Again, that's existing insurance that the township has.
Okay. Does this mean that any damage to the mall relating to our officer makes the township liable? I would assume that yes, and that's
I would assume if we're responsible for the damage,
No, we're not.
Liable.
Oh,
We're not
okay.
liable ordinarily, we have immunity. Now, I'm not going to say what insurance might cover or what they may not, but liability of the township's a completely different issue. There's some things that the township could be liable for, same as they would be if they were in the park or at any other business, but not because of the contract.
Okay. The agreement state that officers will be paid $66.61 per hour and sergeant is paid $77.26 per hour for the remainder of 2020. The question is, does that amount include benefit of OPERS and Medicare? And if so, what does the employee make per hour? I think the last contract was OPERS and Medicare.
it's OPERS, Medicare, and workers' comp are all included in that dollar amount.
And there's a percentage added on.
There is, and I don't have that handy.
Okay. Workers' compensation appears that the township will be responsible for workers' comp while working in off-duty capacity. Why? I think you just mentioned it's a pass-through, right?
Yes.
So we charge them, they pass us through to us, and we pay the amount. Additional questions to be answered as a matter of record, put into the record of proceedings. Police officer, I can look this up, or and we can have this looked up. We can't put it in the proceedings because I don't know off the top of my head. Police officer 6661, how much is Medicare OPERS in the total paid to township? And sergeant at 7726, Medicare OPERS in the total paid to township. Police officer at 6870, Medicare OPERS total paid to township, and sergeant at 7959, Medicare OPERS and total paid to township. We can get those figures broken down because those were all gamed as part of the contract, right? We've got that information. It was understood at the last contract renewal that the mall was paying Medicare, OPERS, and workers' comp. Why do you feel the township should be responsible for workers' comp? I would object to this as a taxpayer. The township has taken on several responsibilities that should be absorbed by the mall. It's a pass-through, is the answer to that, right? Yes. The mall, hours for the mall are listed in the agreement is 10 a.m. to 9 p.m., but the mall closes at 7. Is it still going to be till 9, or is that reflective of?
If they're open till 9, they'll stay till 9. If it's 7, they'll leave at 7.
Okay.
Yeah.
The next question is not for you. If per the attached copy regarding the 27th pay in 2020, how has the township adjusted budgeted for this? It sounds, and I believe that Mr. Mills will answer this, and it's on the agenda too. It sounds as if all employees will get an extra 2 weeks of pay, which is not how this should be handled. If an employee makes $52,000 annually, they would receive $2,000 per pay. 2,000 times 26 equals $52,000 this year. The pay should be reduced each pay period to 1926. 1926 times 27 equals $51,999. An employee's salary is based on an annual rate, not a payroll amount. There are not 54 weeks in a year to warrant this additional pay. If this has not been done, the employee should not get extra pay. Please investigate this before and everyone gets a bonus they are not entitled to. And I know Mr. Mills and I, privately, we had last week a conversation about pay periods, and it's not as simple as it really looks with pay periods. I'm used to when I sign a contract each year, and I've signed now I think 24 of them because I sign one-year contracts. They divide my salary by number of pay periods. That's not how our contracts look because they're different for different. You know, the labor union contract's different than, for instance, a personal service agreement, or they're all different for various reasons that I think you'll delve into, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. Copies attached. I think that is it for me.
Okay, thank you, Matt. And you're correct. There's once again, those have the words approved stamped on them. Nobody here at the township put that on there. And I don't believe we had any other citizens address this evening.
Correct.
Okay, so we will move right along to administrative reports.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Unger. We'll begin with, how about Mr. Denny?
Good evening, Board. I'd like to present the September 2020 Police Activity Report. In September, our officers responded to 3,937 calls for service. We've responded to 31,643 to date. And to kind of put that in some kind of perspective, that's about 116 calls per day. And for our officers, they handle about 1,500 to 2,000 runs per year, just themselves. And that's in addition to their traffic stops, their business checks, vacation checks, directed patrols, and all the other duties that come along with that. In September, officers responded to all calls for service in 9.88 minutes. Again, that covers all calls. Emergency calls, it's much less than that, but there's not a report that I can run that just breaks those down into certain types of calls. It just gives me an aggregate of all the calls and then the response times. That's the response time from dispatch to on scene. They conducted 208 traffic stops and made 4 OVI arrests this month. In response to some of the questions that were asked, Mr. Camello's question,
We have had directed patrols in that neighborhood for the motorbikes for several weeks now, up to, I think, 2 months, actually. On Sunday, we made an arrest and actually seized one of the bikes. So we are enforcing those laws there. But it needs to be noted that the operation of a motorbike is not per se illegal in Ohio. There are restrictions on that. It has to be, if it's on the street, it does have to have a valid Ohio license plate on it. In this case, on Sunday, that call had a fictitious license plate, which is another reason for the impound of the vehicle. The operator, if it's on the street, has to have a driver's license to operate it. If they're on private property, none of those laws apply. If the private property owner allows them to be on their property, they can operate the dirt bike at will. They are permitted in Ohio to operate on township and county streets unless you pass a resolution saying otherwise. They can't be on any state roads or any highways, but they can be on township and county roads. So it's a little complicated, and it requires each local municipality or community to set their standard how they want that. So as of right now, as long as it's properly licensed, they can be on the street. 100 of them could be on the street. There's nothing illegal about that.
And to be licensed, that would, here in Ohio, that would imply financial responsibility. So that dirt bike would also need to be able to present insurance, proof of insurance to an officer if they were pulled over.
Right. A little bit different with motorbikes. Our kids are actually able to operate those down, I think it's 14. They can get a temporary permit to operate when they're with a parent. So it's not just to be out on their own flying around. So there are some differences between a motorcycle and a dirt bike, how they're treated in Ohio law. But
Is it a function of what the horsepower of the bike is, or?
Honestly, I don't know. They do have a definition. They consider dirt bikes to be ATVs in Ohio law. So like four-wheelers, all those fit under the same definition. So how they differentiate that, I don't know. So that doesn't take away from the complaints that we've been having. We are still investigating those, but that might give some explanation why sometimes arrests aren't made or citations aren't issued. They're still required to operate under Ohio law as far as stop signs, speed, and other motor vehicle laws. For Mr. Dorn, I checked his street, and I went all the way back to January 1st. We've not had any calls at all for barking dogs on his street. So I'll reach out to him and find out how he's registering those complaints with us, but we haven't had none up till today. And for Mr. Ballard on cat stand, we have issued warnings to the residents in there, and I've directed our officers that there are no more warnings to be issued. If they're in violation, they're to be arrested. The problem is the order says they are permitted in that house if they're working on the house. So you can imagine how it's kind of difficult for an officer to find that out sometimes. We can't just walk in the house and kick the door down. If they're in there working on the house, then by law they're following the order, and it doesn't. I don't believe it has a time, a day. So we'll do the best we can to enforce that, but we can't just assume because they're at 2 o'clock that they're in violation of the order.
And that's an actual court order from Judge Bouchard? Or?
I think it's a Department of Health order.
It's the Department of Health condemnation.
Can we follow up with Mr. Kesterman at the Department of Health and let him know that there's a possibility that order is being gamed a little bit?
Yeah, I think it certainly is. It's just proving that. Obviously, it's a little more difficult, but I don't think anybody can look at that property and see that any work's been done on it.
Right. I come from just teaching today, Fourth Amendment. You can't just walk in and...
All those rules, all those pesky rules.
The Constitution.
Well, and perhaps if they were allowed in there during regular business hours, but if they're in there overnight, then...
There's no doubt they're in violation of that. Unfortunately, it's just getting that proof that we would need to effect an arrest is a little more difficult.
So what Chief is saying, I think, is that if they came at 3 a.m. and they saw him working, even if there's no noise coming from it, they could technically say, I'm working, I'm cleaning.
Well, and again, we have to define what work is. I mean,
Right.
it's a very ambiguous order that I would like to see maybe a time limit at least, and maybe if we could follow up, I could do that. Maybe
Yeah,
tighten it up
I
a
would
little
say
bit.
with that particular house, because I participated in a cleanup over there a year and a half ago, to follow up on it, and if the Board of Health order can be amended, that they would only be allowed in there during the regular business hours, because if they're in there overnight, then they're residents there and they're staying there. So, and yes, if you could follow up on that,
Well,
Chief, thanks.
that's all I have.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Chief Walls?
Good evening, Board.
Good evening. Good to see you again.
Thank you. And so our September data here, EMS incidents, we had 720. Fire incidents, we had 152. Our contract area in Springfield Township, we made 35 responses, and we had a reported fire loss for the month of $7,650. The significant incident we had was on September the 18th and the 9400 block at Haddington Court with a loss of $6,000, although it could have been significantly more with that arrival of an effective response force and getting water on the fire quickly. We were able to keep it out of the apartment building itself. And so the importance of resources. Our average response time was 5 minutes and 21 seconds, and our first unit on the scene in less than 6 minutes was 70%. And just to talk about data real quick, I want to read a couple things here. Big data provides an opportunity for organizations to unleash new and innovative ways for conducting business, and with humility and willingness and the tools to listen. Big data and the fire service are not necessarily two terms that have been synonymous, but in order to provide effective, efficient, safe, and innovative service, they should become as one. A number of decisions can be made then about the nature of the true problems in the community, more efficient ways to allocate resources, the ways and means to improve training, and how to more safely conduct emergency operations. And so Wing Spread is a fire service retreat that takes place every 10 years. It's where the movers and shakers go into business. And the last one took place in Racine, Wisconsin in 2016. 5 of the 13 statements call for more sophisticated use of data to prevent fires, allocate resources, and protect firefighters. Big data then is a matter of national significance to fire and emergency service providers. And so why is that important? It's important because the author of this paper was Alan Walls. Strategic Analysis and Operations in the Global Economy, October the 15th, 2017, titled Big Data, Globalization, and the Fire Service Profession. And so data is very important. And here within the last 10 days, we received a request, and while wading through that data, it being evident that some of our data was suspect. And as the chief, I take responsibility for that, and I apologize for that. We're in the process of correcting that data, so we've scrubbed almost 20 months of data. We likewise have held a few meetings. We likewise have had Assistant Chief Burns out addressing that reporting and conducting a training program, and we likewise are getting ready to institute a standard operating guideline for quality control that has 3 different tiers to it. And so essentially what happened was, we have data in OpenGov, we have data on a dashboard, but I had been working on a large dashboard myself. And as I began to pull things and compare the two, I guess you could say I had an epiphany and realized something's not right here. And so, once again, as the chief, I apologize for that. We're in the process of correcting it. It was an honest mistake made by those who were inputting data, and we're correcting it.
Is it a situation where you had 2 different people using 2 different ways of inputting data, or?
So in essence, in the fire reporting system, what it has to do with is mutual aid. And so when we would leave and go provide mutual aid, we only provide aid to one department. But if there were 4 departments there, they would put all 4 departments there. So then it shows that we're giving aid to 4, not 1. And so when reconciling those numbers, it became evident that it appeared that we were giving way more than we actually were. So I'd be happy to show anybody the numbers and how we found that. And so the long and the short of it is, it's purely a data entry problem. So we had to go back, locate all those fire reports, correct those, repopulate the numbers, and have good data.
So as an example, if you responded to, and of course Colerain Township has a contiguous border with all the surrounding communities, so if you responded to a fire situation in Cincinnati that was right on just outside of Colerain Township, and Greene responded also, because it's right where Greene and Colerain and Cincinnati come together, so you would show that you gave assistance to Cincinnati, which is where the fire actually was, and it would show that you gave it to Green also? Is that's,
Yes.
well, and then there were two other departments there, but you're changing it so it would just, that house was located in Cincinnati, so it's just a matter of going back and amending that data?
That's correct. We provide aid to one department, and it's the department that we respond to. Everybody else coming there provides aid to that department too, but we don't provide aid to all of them. We just provide aid to that department. And so it was essentially a data entry mistake or error.
So that coding issue, is that an issue, that brings up another question, is coding and how you code that, is that uniform throughout the fire departments in the county, or can or is maybe, I don't know, somebody, Mount Healthy counting it the way we used to count it, or?
It should be counted uniformly, and there were some that were here doing it the right way. There were more doing it the right way than the wrong way, but essentially what we found out was it showed that we gave aid about 88 more times in 20 months than we did.
Okay. And did that affect, I would imagine that would affect bigger areas more than smaller? Or does it not even, okay. Because we've had lengthy discussions about mutual aid and yeah. That it would seem to me that would be more Cincinnati, Green Township, some of the bigger.
You know, it may make sense, given the interest of the board in mutual aid, to do a presentation on mutual aid in the future, so that, because there are lots of misconceptions as it relates to mutual aid. Particularly, we like to focus on that number of dispatches for mutual aid, but the data shows that almost a majority of the time, our units don't even get out of the house before they're called off. So it says, say we respond to 400 mutual aid runs. Actually, our guys don't leave the house 200 of those times.
Correct. So if you looked at data for last year, about 450 times we provided aid, but 225 times we never left because, just use an example. Let's say Whitewater Township Station 105, they're not available. Engine 103 gets dispatched. They're the next closest engine. But then engine 95, which is Whitewater Township's other engine, picks up the run. We're available. But it goes in as a fire report under aid given, but it was dispatched and canceled en route. So those are the nuances sometimes with numbers.
Okay.
And so, like I said, I take responsibility as the chief. We're in the process of correcting it, but I want the board to understand in my own paper the importance of data and the need to make good decisions with good data.
So is canceled en route a different code than never left the house?
In essence, it's kind of one and the same. And so canceled en route, you could pull out on the apron, you could get 2 blocks down the street.
Okay.
Generally speaking, you get canceled pretty quick because another unit comes available and picks it up. And so I would agree with Administrator Mills when it comes to some misconceptions. And I'll give a quick example. Interstate 74 is in Colerain Township. It takes 11 to 13 minutes to get to Interstate 74 from our closest station. It takes 4 minutes to get there from Station 105. So, oftentimes with motor vehicle crashes on Interstate 74, we also dispatch Engine 105 and ALS 105, which is one of the WestJet medics. They can arrive quickly, they can secure the scene, they begin to triage the patient and provide care, and we're still 7 minutes out. I would hope that when people think about response times, they would say, I want somebody there in 4 minutes, not 11 to 13 minutes. And that's the importance of aid in those types of situations. Likewise, when it's assembling those resources like we talked about on Haddington Court. So that day, we had Springfield Township, we had North College Hill, we had Forest Park, and we had Colerain there. We assembled those resources in short order. They get water on the fire, and they keep from losing half of a building. We're the recipient of that.
Okay.
So can aid be abused? Absolutely. Do we have controls in place to prevent that? Absolutely.
Yeah, the further I dig on this, I think that there's some, to me it's different if they've never left the house at all. That's not a mutual aid. I mean, they called you, but it's really technically, you may define it as one, but it didn't cost us a nickel. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And what happens is, with computer-aided dispatch and GPS, we're the next closest unit, say, to Miami Town, up on top of the hill here. Well, it may grab us, but then they're available and they pick it up. We don't go anywhere.
Okay.
So,
And as I said about the contiguous border with so many other communities, we're not an island out in the water. We have, every one of our streets is next to the next community, and so that's a lot of sorting out who's going to go there. And if you want to come back at a future meeting with some cleared up data, that would be marvelous.
great.
So,
Thank you for bringing that to our attention, and integrity and honor right there. I appreciate it.
I own it. I'm the chief.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
thank you.
Great. For the next two administrative reports in public services and planning, I'd like to invite Mr. Weckbach up.
Evening, board.
Evening.
So to start off, I mean, the numbers are just incredible in terms of park usage this year. I mean, it's going through the roof. I can't imagine what year-end numbers are going to look like, but I think as we found throughout the year that with COVID and everything going on, the parks are one of our few respites that people can go to and still enjoy themselves and have a good time. So the numbers speak for themselves there. On a side note, with public services, just as an FYI for the board, they have the proofs back on the veterans banners. They're going through following up with anybody if they need to make a tweak on those, and they're in the production phase. So those should hopefully be up sometime in the next couple of weeks to a month and in time for Veterans Day. So that'll be a nice thing to have come to fruition. That's it for public services this month. When it comes to the planning and zoning department, the numbers are good there too. When we look at permits and cases, despite COVID, people are doing a lot of their house projects and things like that. So those continue to be higher than they were in prior years. Code enforcement continues to have a lot going on. What's really neat about code enforcement is something that I wanted to highlight that happened a couple months ago, but just sometimes with the grind, we forget about things like this. In terms of collaboration across our departments, our code enforcement officer, Chris Cavallero, was out on a site and noticed something that looked a little suspect. So when he got back to the office, he made a call into the police department. After the fact, they went out and investigated, and it turned out to be a major source of illegal activity that the police department was able to correct and stop and hopefully get some things off the streets. So just wanted to quickly highlight that, give a little bit of kudos to Chris and also to the team to show how when our code enforcement officials are out there and they have the opportunity to really assess a situation, they can make more of an impact than just the violation and getting that corrected. Sometimes they notice other things, and they don't hesitate to work across departments. So that's it for departmental reports from me.
Jeff?
Thank you, Jeff.
Great. And from administration, I just wanted to share, I guess I could answer some of these questions that came up during the citizens' address. On the topic of Capstan, there was a large trash abatement that occurred on Capstan just last week, I believe. So we carried off a great deal of material, debris, and trash off of that site. It is very frustrating. I understand the frustration of the neighbors and Chad in particular, and we will keep after this property. I think that most of the questions from Ms. Moore were answered by Mr. Denny, but the first one about software services order form, that was it was an existing software vendor that we added additional capacity to, so that this would allow us to sign certain documents electronically, which is more and more important given COVID. And then we'll talk a whole lot about the 27th pay and Halloween later on this evening, I believe.
Okay, and that,
Mr. Mills? Oh,
yes.
sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Just two quick questions. So for the next meeting, the org chart and the recycle fund for the litter.
So that's on the agenda for tonight to discuss?
Okay.
Yep.
Well, okay. The under old business. Okay, I got you. Because I didn't notice in the packet, was there a write up for the org chart? Did I miss that?
No, because there are what I'm looking for is guidance on, I've got several paths that we can walk
Okay,
down.
gotcha.
And so which path you want, and then we'll come back and
Okay.
make it happen.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Thank you, Jeff Mills.
Yes, sir.
And we'll move on to the next item, which is trustees report. Raj or Matt, would either one of you like to go first?
Thank you. I'll keep it very brief. So the banners, I'm very excited about the banners, and I've also been in contact with Tom Arnold with the ODOT as well, and looking to get some of the banners up at a couple of our overpasses for American flags, that kind of thing. Another that is a thing championed by Mr. Green with the veterans, Colerain veterans. The litter, it's amazing. So I didn't write it down, but there's another group gathering this Sunday. Somebody may have that on them right now, but they're going to target Galbraith east of Colerain, I believe. There have been groups out that have picked up bags and bags and bags and bags of trash. And it's remarkable to see that the community get involved and things like that. And I probably didn't use the word trash once in the entire campaign, and it's just sometimes something comes to you that there's just an overwhelming wave of people that are behind, and this is something that the whole community's behind, and I'm so happy that they've been emboldened, and we're emboldened, and we're going to keep plugging away at this. And I think that might be all I have in my report.
Thank you, Matt. Oh, go ahead, Rod, sure. You on your mic?
Thank you. First, I want to congratulate the Colerain Community Association on being a Gold Star group, the Gold Star Award. From the ODOT Adaptive Highway Program. This group, they're very dedicated people. They've been very instrumental in cleaning up 275, the exit ramp, on doing all the flowers and everything look very beautiful, and also Ronald Reagan ramp from Colerain Avenue. They work tirelessly to make this beautiful. I want to congratulate those group of people for their pride in taking care of our township. Also, I want to congratulate and thank the following people cleaning up the roads and picking litter up. I happened to be with them, joined them last Sunday morning. They did an amazing job. These are the following people. They work so hard. Melissa, we did this, but in the Pippin Road, and they've been collected several bags of litter along the Pippin Road. And these are Melissa Staley, Lori McMillan, and Debbie Horst, Chad Spiker, Robert Ricardo, and Robert Ricardo and Matt Teetsort. They are amazing, and they are very dedicated to make Colerain Township a beautiful place to live. And also I want to thank our own Colerain Fire Station and in Springdale Road, picking up the trash around 3200 block of around the Springdale Road next to the firehouse. It looks amazing. I want to thank and salute those people on behalf of our township. I also want to give a great news to the residents and the administration. I spoke to Jeff Mills. Last week, I met with the Metro CEO, Daryl, and they're going to install a new benches along the Colerain Avenue with the trash cans. That's amazing things. It's happening along the Colerain Avenue. So it is going to happen very soon as they find the contractors able to install. Right now, they are very backlogged on the contractor installing in this the benches. So there's going to be steel benches and also metal trash cans anchored to the ground. And it's going to cost no money to the township. Metro going to take care of all the expenses. I got another good news. On October 26, 9 o'clock, myself and Steve Shabbat's office, Steve Shabbat will join if he doesn't have any session going on in Washington, and also his chief of staff meeting with the ODOT 9 o'clock, around 9 to is an hour meeting about how the federal government, state government to help the Colerain corridor plan that we designed. And it's a very monumental step for the beautification the program. These are the great things. I'm so happy about seeing that. And also, I'm going to meet with ODOT, Justin Kemp, who is in charge of the Colerain Avenue, and our township public works, so how we can they control the litter pickup and everything, how they can help us. You all know that ODOT already have the people, the contractors doing the cleanup in the highways. Since the Colerain Avenue is part of the ODOT, they also can utilize those contract people to clean up that Colerain Avenue. So these are the important things that I'm looking forward to see happen. Thanks.
Thank you, Raj. As mentioned earlier, here in Colerain Township, we do have a nice system of parks. We were recently out at Heritage Park and then up at Colerain Park, as my wife and I like to go out and walk. They're very clean and well maintained, especially considering the amount of foot traffic that we have there. Over 3 weekends in September, ODOT has completed their work on putting a new concrete surface and then grooving the new surface of the bridge deck of Colerain Avenue over I-275, so that's a nice improvement. And then I'd like to acknowledge that the new Speedway gas station, and people go, well, it's a gas station. Well, it's quite an improvement over the Speedway gas station that was up near Struble and Colerain. It's a very nice investment that increases our tax base, and it's just a lot nicer and bigger and newer than the station that was there for several years. And it seems that they have opened in the past week or so, and I stopped in there and they were very busy. So that's another development up at the north end of Colerain Avenue, and everybody needs gasoline, and that just increases the competition along Colerain Avenue just a little bit more, which is good for all of us. And most of the other items happen to be on the agenda tonight, and I'll comment on those as they come up. So with that, we'll move on to new business.
Mr. Chair, I did forget one thing.
Go ahead, Matt.
October 26th, farmers to families. Do you want to?
Sure. Yep.
Okay.
So the USDA has a program where they are giving boxes of food, vegetables for sure, maybe dairy, maybe meat, to any resident of any place. So, I mean, we're going to have it here, and there's going to be a semi-truck full of boxes of food, and from, I think it's from 1 to 4, but it's check circle, check our news feed. I believe it's 1 to 4. Anyone can drive up and get a box of fresh food from the USDA. And that's in partnership with Catholic Charities, and Mr. Wallert connected the township with Catholic Charities, and we were able to make that happen.
And Senator Portman's office was originally reached out. Are you looking for volunteers still for that day?
I don't think so. Is that Mr. Weckbach? Oh, okay. Catholic Charities.
Yeah, just Google Catholic Relief, Catholic Charities, and it'll come up. It's a fantastic program. Usually these kind of things have canned foods. These are fresh vegetables and perhaps fresh dairy or meat, depending on what's available.
Correct.
Thank you so much. I know that this was an organizational nightmare because we needed a loading dock and we didn't have one.
Right.
So
We're able to make it work.
awesome. That's great. Thank you.
And that said, with the exception of using our property to distribute the food on, we have no other cost as it's a volunteer effort?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yep. I mean, we'll have, police officers working traffic, and we'll have the staff time in to organize it, but aside from that, yeah, no cost.
Okay, none of the material we're paying for.
Correct.
Okay, and we'll move on to new business.
Excellent. The first item of new business comes from our public safety departments, and Chief Denny, would you take the first two?
I have two items tonight. The first is recommend adoption of a motion to issue a noise permit to St. John the Baptist School for November 14th, 2020 from 6 p.m. to 11:30 p.m. This is their second permit. They're permitted 4 per year.
I will motion to issue noise permit to St. John the Baptist.
I second it.
It's been motioned and seconded. Is there any discussion? Yes, the permit that was issued earlier this year was for an event that I believe was canceled due to COVID. And I believe it's for the PTO. My wife is a teacher there, and this does not involve her, so I don't see any conflict in me voting on it. This is a nighttime weekend event, I think November 14th.
I'm not sure. I think,
Yeah,
yes.
because that's why they need the
Sunday.
noise permit. Okay, was there any other discussion?
None.
Mr. Baker, please call for a vote.
Mr. Rajagopal,
Aye.
Mr. Unger,
Aye.
Mr. Waller.
Aye.
Before I hit the next item, I want to correct myself. I misspoke. We did work them all from September 14th to September 30th. We brought our officers back from COVID staffing. The mall had us back for that period of time, and then on September 30th, I took them back off of that because we went back to some COVID-related stuff, and we didn't want them out there. So from the 14th to the 30th, they did work there, and then we returned back full on 10/21. I'm sorry, in October. So there's a few days there where we weren't inside the mall.
Okay, and then you were gonna,
I don't want to let you know we worked it in September. I'd said earlier we hadn't.
okay, and then the next item is yours also?
Yes, next item is motion authorizing the township administrator to execute an agreement with T Northgate Mall LLC. Recommended adoption of that motion. This is a renewal of the existing agreement we have with Northgate. It increases the rates for the officers. And the term of this agreement is from October 21st, 2020 to October 22nd, 2021. This is an easy one for us, really. It cost us absolutely nothing. These officers are not staffing or not on duty at the time with the township. And we bring in about $5,000 a month in revenue for the township every month. That's been consistent for the last couple of years. This year we did, January and February were $5,000 each month. And then when COVID hit, obviously that's been reduced. I think this year we brought close to $17,000 in. And that's above what we pay the officers. And it does give us that additional officer on duty for any use that we might have throughout the township if we have an emergency.
So the officer could leave, well, let's go ahead and bring it to the floor first. I would motion that we authorize the township administrator to execute an agreement with T Northgate Mall Limited Liability Corporation.
I'll second that.
It's been motioned and seconded. Is there any discussion? And so my question would be, if we had to pull an officer out of there to go on a high priority emergency, we could pull them off, and then the hourly rate would, I mean,
It would stop at that point. They are
Okay.
originally they are employed by the township and they are at our disposal if we need them.
and in the long history of this, have you found that having an officer up there deters crime or theft, or is that a hard thing to determine?
That part's a little difficult to determine. It does take some of the call volume off the officers. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, we have about 2 to 3 calls per day now at the mall. So it does take a small amount out at this point. It was more last year, and that's been reduced a lot. So we're about 2 to 3 calls a day are handled by the officer that's at the mall. Those aren't dispatched to our police officers on the street, incurring a cost for us for dispatch and taking our officer off the road and doing whatever happens to happen at the mall. So we do have a smaller benefit there, but it is a benefit.
But if we didn't have somebody there and you ran 3 calls a day, then we get no compensation for that.
No,
If they call right now because somebody's out in the parking lot and it's after hours, that's a call that we absorb 100% of the cost on?
Yes.
So having somebody up there might be beneficial because it saves us from pulling somebody out and send them up there. And plus they're already on site, which saves 2.5 minutes of getting somebody on site.
Yes.
Other discussion?
I just wanted to clarify something that you said about a minute and a half ago. You said that, what, $5,000 a month after the cost, I think you said after the salary of the officer, but in fact, after the OPERS and the whole,
Yeah, I'll explain that in a little more detail. We charge at the highest rate the officers make.
okay,
Now, that doesn't mean that those officers are always working that. So we might have a brand-new officer working, but we're billing at that top rate, if that makes sense.
yeah,
We have a constant rate for officers, constant rate for sergeants. Now, I think the officers, brand-new officer is 25-something an hour, or a full-time officer is 38, I believe. So it's a significant difference, and that does where most of that money comes from. So 5% off the top, first of all, goes to the township, and then any difference there in that pay goes to the township as well.
okay, so the 5,000 approximate, I mean, it's what, give or take, you're
We're
talking
around
a month
50 to
is
60 a year.
after workers' comp, after salary, after all that?
Yes, that's
Okay,
after everything.
that's what I want to clarify, okay.
So then we have a 5% administrative fee to just cover our expenses that are involved?
Cost for us to keep track of the hours and to take
Okay.
care of all that.
Go ahead, Raj.
Chief, I had a question also, Larry could answer. I know you wrote this contract pretty much,
I didn't write it. It's the same contract they've been using
same
for
contract
years.
up here, okay.
I reviewed it.
Yeah,
and It
right.
looked fine to me.
Okay. I remember this in line item 12.1, like we talked about this earlier when you were answering the questions. The workers' compensation insurance covering all officers employed directly or indirectly by township and all employees and agents of township with respect to whom death or bodily injury claims could be asserted against the landlord or township as required by the law. There is no concrete thing. The landlord could get away from it. I'm not going to pay for it. So I think this is a question I brought it last time too, when the contract came. And I thought you guys going to adjust that language. You know, I like to see, since it's territory, we working in this, and him also has to be certain responsibility to that.
There are employees, Raj.
Hmm?
These officers are employees of Colerain Township.
Right.
They're working for Colerain Township under the direction and control of the police chief, even when they're patrolling at Northgate Mall. As such, we are responsible for their workers' compensation. If they're injured on the job, Colerain Township is going to pay their workers' compensation. So that's by law. So this contract covers that, but it just says what the law is.
But they're also working on off-duty.
But the
But
contract,
they're working on off-duty, you know?
yes, but the contract says they're still under the direction and control of the police chief. And for workers' compensation purposes, it's whose direction and control are you under? I've had many of these situations arise. I represented Kroger for many, many years, and they have police officers in a lot of the grocery markets. But even though they're being paid, this isn't exactly even the same, because in those cases, they're usually paid by the grocery market. But still, they report to their police department because as police officers, they have the right to make an arrest. If you're not acting as a police officer, you have no right to make an arrest, and therefore you would be worthless to the Northgate Mall. So if they're going to be acting as police officers, if they're going to be acting under the direction and control of the police chief, then their workers' compensation is attributable to Colerain Township.
I think what might be misunderstanding is that they are not off duty. They are assigned and scheduled by the police department, and they're paid at an overtime rate. This is not an off
So
duty.
previously, you were employing off-duty officers.
No, sir.
Never was off-duty
2
officers.
years ago, we did, yes. At this point, we are scheduling them. They put in their request, we schedule them. We can mandate overtime if it's not signed up for, and they're paid at an overtime rate through the township. They're working.
Okay. On the other hand, all the beats are at most covered, right? If,
Yes,
if,
it's
if,
mandatory. We
if
have
you have officers called in sick, or something happened on vacation, or sick leave, or something happened, but we have responsible to cover all the beats in our township.
Yes.
So if you don't have offices, you got all the offices covered, all the beats, there are no offices left, then how are you going to fulfill the mall?
We have 54 officers I can pull from.
Sorry?
We have 54 officers that are on a list for mandatory overtime.
Okay,
If an officer calls off sick, we have 5 beats. We would fill that with an overtime. We have enough officers to do that.
okay, thank you. So what it really concerns me, the language, you put a zero, here's a guy, a multi, I would say, it's a billionaire. And you don't give anything care about this North Gate. You don't even care what goes on North Gate. And you don't want to do anything with the North Gate. And this guy, he can wash off his hands. Okay, I'm not paying anything. He could zero thing. Something happened in his property. He just walk away scot-free. No. And we take all the responsibilities. That kind of bothers me a little bit. It's still his property. This language, I'm not satisfied with the language, but I'll support this. I'll support this contract, agreement, because I want to support our police officers, our police department, anything. And you're saying we got adequate beat officers covered in our township. I'll support this, but this thing really bothers me. Because you guys walking scot-free.
Raj, what number is that? I'm still trying to find that in this contract.
12-1. 12-1, page,
And while Matt's looking at that, I would comment that it's tough to own and operate a shopping mall. And Tabani has other properties besides the one at Northgate, and there's vacancy at Northgate. There's no question about that. It's my understanding that they are in the process of moving all the stores into one section of the mall so that it would be more populated in that area, and then, sort of putting up a wall to close off the other part of the mall. And that mall's not going to be like that forever. Market conditions will drive a change there, and that's how it should be. Is somebody will come in, that's a corner of Colerain and Springdale, there's a lot of traffic there. And we did a study a couple years ago that shows it would support a different use on that property, maybe a mix of retail and housing. And there is quite a demand for housing in this township, and I think it's a good idea to have this contract because I want to preserve what's there, and that'll make it more appealing to a developer someday, and I hope that someday gets here soon. There's just so much going on in our country right now. I'm sure whatever happens next month, that'll give people a direction that we're heading, and Tabani's not going to sit on that forever, and something's going to happen. There's just a lot of uncertainty right now, and so that's why I will support this contract to stabilize what's going on in there. And I've talked to a couple of the merchants there, and they are all about having our police department there.
Yeah, and I don't think this contract says anything at all about liability. I mean, all this contract says is that the township will provide insurance that covers workers' compensation, that covers liability, that covers automobile insurance. And the township already has that insurance. They're not coming up with any additional insurance. Now, if one of our officers slips and falls in the mall because of negligence of the mall, they can sue the mall. There's nothing in here that says the mall is not liable. All it says is the township will carry insurance, and the township already carries that insurance. And they've got
That's
insurance
a
on
discussion
all
we
their
had
offices.
the last year. I remember that the landlord is supposed to buy that insurance also, the liability insurance. If anybody,
The landlord
if a police officer, hope it won't happen, on its negligence. If people sue, of his negligence, then this happened in the
the
mall
landlord,
property.
the landlord
He
can't-
acted upon something.
the landlord can't carry insurance for our officers. And if our officers are negligent, they have immunity, unless they're driving a car and hit somebody. but they're employed by the township, they're acting on the township's behalf, and as I understand it, the mall is covering our cost for the workers' compensation by what they pay us. But in terms of liability for the officers, what the officers do, that's not going to be on the mall. The mall is not going to be responsible for that. They're going to be responsible for their own negligence, but they don't have immunity like Colerain Township does. If a Colerain Township does something negligent, ordinarily, under statutory immunity, they won't be liable anyway. But there's
So the
nothing.
landlord don't carry any liability insurance for the property?
Oh, sure they do. I'm sure Northgate Mall has insurance on their property.
So it won't cover, they won't take a part of that coverage, they won't do it.
Well, they cover their mall and they're paying for the workers' compensation. I don't understand what else you would want them to pay for.
You know, they should have also part of that, you know, in the language to pay for the liabilities if something occurs in the future.
Something that an officer does?
Yeah, right.
Well, their insurance, even if they carried that insurance, their insurance wouldn't pay that because that's liability that would go to Colerain Township and not to them. I guess that would be something that we could ask for more money from them in order to cover part of our insurance costs. But as I understood it, we were already getting payment for the workers' comp, and I don't think it raises our insurance cost.
And this does not waive any liability by the mall, right?
It does
I mean,
not.
yeah, it's just saying that if, my non-legal view of this is, all employees and agents of the township with respect to whom death or bodily injury claims could be asserted against either the landlord or the township, we have to have insurance in case we get sued. They have their own if they get sued.
Yeah.
So, because guess what? Something happens, township's getting sued, the mall's getting sued, chief's getting sued, we're all getting sued, right? Pretty much, I mean.
Yeah, and then a judge or a jury would probably dismiss defendants based on what the incident was.
Right, but I think that's all that it's saying is, look, you both need to be covered. None of you are exempt in this. Is that a fair?
That's the way I read it.
Okay.
Well, I don't have any other comments.
I don't know.
No, I don't either.
Do you, Raj?
No.
Okay, Mr. Baker, please call for a vote.
Mr. Rajagopal,
Aye.
Mr. Unger,
Aye.
Mr. Waller.
All right,
Thank you, Chief.
thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Next item, Mr. Mills, item C.
Yes, sir. Next item will be presented by Chief Alan Walls.
Good evening again. I just have one item for tonight. So requesting authorization to purchase a replacement emergency medical services division vehicle from Fuller Ford of Cincinnati. It'll be a 2021 Ford Explorer Interceptor with a road-ready package at a cost of $38,796. It is through the U.S. General Services Administration procurement program pricing. That vehicle will replace a 2008 Ford Expedition EL that will be reassigned within the department that will probably go to Station 109 and replace a 1998 Dodge Durango.
I'll motion to approve the authorization of replacement emergency medical services division vehicle.
And I'll second it. Is this a budgeted item?
It was in the capital budget for 2020.
Okay, is there any other discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Baker, please call for a vote.
Mr. Rajagopal,
Aye.
Mr. Unger,
Aye.
Mr. Waller.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief. You're 1 for 1.
Next
Okay.
item, Mr. Mills.
Yes, sir. The next item comes from the Planning and Zoning Department. It is a motion to initiate a text amendment to regulate massage parlors. This is stemming from our conversation from the previous meetings. And this addresses specifically making sure that massage parlors that are not licensed with the state of Ohio are regulated as sexually oriented businesses. So the go-forward plan for preventing future massage parlors from that are not licensed with the state of Ohio from coming into the township is to regulate them as sexually oriented businesses. With the adoption of this motion, staff would work with the law director to craft a text amendment to the zoning resolution that would be brought to the zoning commission. they'll make a recommendation to the Board of Trustees for legislative amendment to the text of the zoning resolution. Recommendation is to adopt.
I would motion that we initiate a text amendment to regulate massage parlors.
I'll second.
It's been motioned and seconded. Is there any discussion? I think that that's the better way to go, based on what I know about it and the long history is through zoning. And I know we had quite a lively discussion about it at the last meeting, but I think that's probably the better way to go. Other discussion?
No,
So do you need so we need to call for a vote.
Mr. Rajagopal,
aye.
Mr. Unger,
Aye.
Mr. Waller.
All right.
Thank you, Board. The next item is the resolution declaring nuisance and ordering abatement. It is recommended for adoption that the resolution allows for the removal and of grass, tall grass, and/or trash at the following properties: 2400 Gulf, 2522 Impala, 8368 Haskell, 1053-4 Pippin. Recommendation is to adopt the resolution.
I motion that we would do such a thing.
Second.
Been motioned and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Baker, please call for a vote.
Mr. Rajagopal,
Aye.
Mr. Unger,
Aye.
Mr. Waller.
All right.
Thank you, Board. The next set of items are from administration. And the first one is a motion to establish the 2020 Halloween trick-or-treat hours in Colerain Township to be from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. on October 31st, 2020. The recommendation is for adoption.
I would motion that we establish 2020 Halloween trick-or-treat hours in Colerain Township to be from 6 p.m. until 8 p.m. on October 31st, 2020.
I will second.
It's been motioned and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, I hope the lady who wants to know, she's listening to this.
Well, yes, we did have, that was a citizen's address item. And I will mention that I did get one email a week and a half ago from a person that doesn't think we should have trick or treat because of the COVID situation. But I would say thank you for your input, and that's some good input. And those that are have any type of extra condition that might be affected by COVID, please consider that when evaluating if you want to participate or not. But it is an outdoor event, and it's for a couple hours, and there's a lot of neighbors that haven't seen neighbors and folks that haven't seen each other, and it sounds like a pretty controlled 2 hours, and I'm all for it.
Yes, sir, and we'll be putting out, stay tuned to Circle, we'll be putting out lots of tips on ways to have a COVID-safe Halloween this year.
And was there any other discussion?
Well, let's talk about Reese cups. I'm going to use my bully pulpit to add an amendment that you have to pass out Reese cups. Is that possible? That's a joke. Sorry.
No, that's
No, it's. I think this is perfect because if you don't want to participate, don't. And I mean, this checks all the boxes for both sides of this question.
Any other discussion, Mr. Raj?
Nope.
Okay, then Mr. Baker, please call for a vote.
Mr. Rajagopal,
Aye.
Mr. Unger,
Aye.
Mr. Waller.
All right.
Very good. I'd like to invite Mr. McElravy to the podium to discuss with you a series of motions and resolutions related to the Finance Department.
Good evening, Board.
Good evening.
Got my stack upside down here. There are a handful of resolutions that we bring before you, most of which have to do with the CARES Act. The first is a resolution authorizing the adoption of additional appropriations. This is coming from the federal government, of course, by way of the state of Ohio.
Mr. McElravy, I think you jumped to C.
Did I?
Yep.
My apologies. I may have these out of order.
Okay.
Which one is first on the agenda?
It's a motion authorizing township administrator to execute a local jurisdiction agreement with the Board of County Commissioners regarding the CARES Act. I can take that one if you like. And then we can jump to C.
My apologies.
No problem.
So this resolution actually comes to the township via Hamilton County and, of course, the federal government. This would provide an additional $669,296 in CARES funding to the township. The model that the county has adopted in this case is a little bit different from what we have seen to date, in that it would only the only eligible uses would be for reimbursement of eligible expenses that we have already incurred. So consistent with the direction that staff received coming out of the work session back in September, staff intends to allocate these funds toward eligible public safety payroll expenses, and the recommendation is adoption of the resolution.
I would motion that we authorize the township administrator to execute a local jurisdiction agreement with the Board of County Commissioners of Hamilton County regarding the CARES Act.
I'll second.
It's been motioned and seconded. Is there any discussion?
None.
I would like to add that I've heard that these funds, there's other communities that have not been very proactive in chasing these reimbursements for our cost, for their cost, and I appreciate the work that you and the other staff members have done, because this board and the previous board, we were always advocating for go find funds from somewhere else besides the local homeowners and property owners, and thank you for pursuing this, and please thank you for bringing this to the board and let us know what we can do to help. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Baker, please call for a vote.
Before the vote, could I just clarify that this is a motion?
Yes.
Correct, and not a resolution?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Rajagopal?
Aye.
Mr. Unger?
Aye.
Mr. Waller?
Aye.
The next item, Jeff.
The next item, this is the 2.1 million.
Yes, sir.
Okay. The next resolution authorizes the adoption of additional appropriations, again, through the CARES Act. In this case, it's an allocation coming to the township from the state of Ohio. It is for $2,134,037. Again, consistent with the direction that we received at the September 8th work session. Staff recommends using the funds to cover public safety payroll expenses and equipment as deemed eligible through the Act and the guidance that we've received from the Ohio Office of Budget and Management. Now, this appropriation, should the board approve it, combined with the original appropriation from the first round of CARE funds that we received, would bring the total appropriation for the funding coming from the state to $2,435,693.45. And the staff recommendation is adoption.
Jeff, if this is a resolution, you should read the title, please.
Staff recommends adoption of the resolution authorizing the adoption of additional appropriations Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security CARES Act.
I will move to accept the resolution authorizing the adoption of additional appropriations Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security CARES Act.
I will second it. It's been motioned and seconded. Is there any discussion? And it's my understanding what we're doing here is this will show up in our budget, and when folks look at it and say, wow, you spent an additional $2 million plus last year, well, that's because we had this income and we have to account for it in our budget. So we're not, yes, we are spending $2 million more, but it came from somewhere else. We just have to include it.
That is correct.
Okay,
Yes, this
so
is
when-
a one-time source of revenue.
Because we'll have
Not
folks that'll
recurring.
come to us in January and say, well, you blew the budget last year. Well, we didn't. This is other monies, other funds that you and the other staff members have gone out and secured, and that's why it will show as a change in our budget.
Yes, sir.
Is there any other discussion?
Hey, Jeff, this money has to be spent by, what, December?
December 30th.
December 31st. So you already allotted money for the necessary departments.
Yes.
Okay. It complies with the guidelines of the CARES Act distributions.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Baker, please call for a vote.
Mr. Rajagopal,
Aye.
Mr. Unger,
Aye.
Mr. Waller.
Aye.
Item D.
Resolution authorizing the adoption of amended appropriations for the year 2020.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you. So this resolution addresses two changes that we need to make to appropriations for the 2020 budget to reflect two expenses that have changed since those appropriations were originally approved. The first has to do with the Megaland project. As you'll recall, the bids came in recently and they were slightly higher than budget to the tune of $35,433.30. So what this does is align appropriations with those bids so that we're able to proceed with the project. And then the second item accounts for a fee that is levied by the county auditor as a result of them collecting tax revenues on our behalf. And this is for the Colerain Town Center Rumpke TIF Fund. And that adjustment is, I believe it's $3,522, bringing the total appropriation for the fund to $43,240.
Jeff, you read the title?
And the title is a resolution authorizing the adoption of amended appropriations for the year 2020.
And I would move that we, for the resolution authorizing the adoption of amended appropriations for the year 2020.
So I want to understand it correct. Oh,
second it?
Go ahead. Oh, okay. I second it.
It's been motioned and seconded. Go ahead, Raj.
I'm going to your table there. Adoption amended. Okay, you got the Colerain Town Center / Rumpke TIF, $43,240, right? Then you got a Parks and Services, $1,542,987. So, with this money, how are you going to distribute that money or amend this? Explain to me in detail how that money.
Sure. So for the Parks and Services Fund, this is the total appropriation for the fund for the 2020 budget. The adjustment that we are seeking from the board is to add a little over $35,000 to that appropriation in order to be able to move forward with the Megaland project.
Okay. So where is that money coming from, 35,000? You said,
The source of the funds? That would come from within the parks budget.
okay.
All right. Do you have anything else, Raj?
No.
Any other discussion? Mr. Baker, please call for a vote.
Mr. Rajagopal,
Aye.
Mr. Unger,
Aye.
Mr. Waller.
Aye.
And then item E.
This is the amended resolution authorizing the adoption of appropriations related to the CARES Act. Thank you. So this amended resolution, as the name implies, amends a resolution that was previously approved by the board due to a change in guidance that we've received from the Ohio Office of Budget and Management. Originally, the guidance that we had received is that only, or up to 50% of staff costs associated with the response to the public health emergency would be eligible under the Act. Since then, based on guidance that the Ohio Office of Budget Management has received from the United States Treasury, they have advised us that all public safety payroll expenditures are eligible under the Act from the time that the public health emergency was declared in March through the end of December. So what this resolution does is amend the language in Section 2 of the resolution to redefine substantially dedicated to remove the 50% language.
So I resolve to authorize the adoption of, amend the resolution authorizing the adoption of appropriation for the CARES Act.
And
I
that
will-
is the title of the resolution.
I will second for the amended resolution authorizing the adoption of appropriation CARES Act. It's been motioned and seconded. Is there any discussion?
No.
None.
Hearing none, Mr. Baker, please call for a vote.
Mr. Rajagopal,
Aye.
Mr. Unger,
Aye.
Mr. Waller.
Aye.
And finally,
Yes.
the last item is a resolution accepting the amounts and rates as determined by the Budget Commission and authorizing the necessary tax levies and certifying them to the county auditor.
I think we have one more on there.
I think you have item F.
Item F is resolution authorizing the adoption of appropriations. This is the 669 CARES. This is appropriating the money.
296.
Oh, my apologies.
Yep.
Obviously, I don't have the agenda in front of me.
This is
This
one.
is the item that I led off with. Yes, okay.
Yes,
So,
okay.
this is a resolution authorizing the adoption of appropriations, again, for the CARES Act. This is the allocation that is being offered by Hamilton County to provide an additional $669,296 in CARES funding to the township. This is the bucket, for lack of a better term, that I was referring to earlier, that is going to be managed on a reimbursement basis rather than operating either on a go-forward or reimbursement basis, the way that all of the other funds are. In every other way, it functions the same as all the other CARES Act appropriations that we have discussed. And the staff recommendation is adoption of the resolution.
Please read the title.
Sure. The resolution authorizing the adoption of appropriation, Coronavirus Aid Relief and Economic Security CARES Act.
I move to accept the resolution authorizing the adoption of appropriations, coronavirus aid, relief, and economic security CARES Act.
I second it.
It's been motioned and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Baker, please call for a vote.
Mr. Rajagopal,
Aye.
Mr. Unger,
Aye.
Mr. Waller.
Aye.
And finally, the last resolution before you is accepting the amounts and rates as determined by the Budget Commission and authorizing the necessary tax levies and certifying them to the county auditor. This is the last step in a process that the board began back in June when it established the tentative tax budget for the upcoming year. There was a public hearing held in June, and then the board acted. Since then, the Hamilton County Budget Commission has reviewed those rates and accepted them and or approved them, and now they are returning them to us with a requirement that we accept and certify them, and then we will return that after board action to the county, which will be the last step in the process for establishing these rates for the upcoming tax year. The staff recommendation is adoption of the resolution accepting the amounts and rates as determined by the County Budget Commission and authorizing the necessary tax levies and certifying them to the county auditor.
I move to accept the resolution accepting the amounts and rates as determined by the County Budget Commission and authorizing necessary tax levies and certifying them to the county auditor.
I will second it. It's been motioned and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Baker, please call for a vote.
Mr. Rajagopal,
Aye.
Mr. Unger,
Aye.
Mr. Waller.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. McElravy.
And Jeff, I'd like to point out that you've been here quite a while now, and it seems like you're quietly doing your work back in the corner, and it looks like you've got a lot accomplished, and I appreciate you being here. I hope you are enjoying your time here with us at Colerain Township.
I am. Thank you, sir.
And to my fellow trustees, I'd like to point out that this is that rare occasion when we have all four of our Jeffs in the same room, which is a lot.
That's right. Look,
Sometimes it's too many. I'm just kidding. And three of them spell their name correctly. That's good.
Jeff, great work. Good work.
Thank you.
Good work.
I think you're doing a real good job back there in the corner, just
There in the corner.
where they parked you back in the corner. So, but I think you're doing a great job here, and I really appreciate it. And a lot of folks that watch these meetings, they've probably never met you before. So, thank you for your work. And then to take us to the next item, Mr. Mills.
yes, sir. The next item is a motion authorizing the township administrator to execute a legal services agreement with Law Director Larry Barbier. Back in September on the 8th, the Board of Trustees unanimously adopted a motion to renew and extend the law director's legal services contract. Subsequent to that meeting, I have negotiated with Mr. Solman, Mr. Barbier, and those negotiations have resulted in a mutual desire to extend the term of the existing legal services agreement with a new expiration date of either December 31st, 2021 or December 31st, 2022. All other portions of the agreement would remain the same. So in sum, the cost does not go up. And if you would prefer to have a 1-year or a 2-year agreement, both of those contracts have been included in the trustee agenda packet. And so when making the motion, I would just recommend specifying whether you want a 1-year term or a 2-year term.
So you're not making two motions, right? For all one motion, either 1 year, 2 year, we decide on the voting,
Yes.
right?
So if you would like for the contract to be a 1-year term, when the person makes the motion, just specify that it's for the 1-year term or the 2-year term.
Okay. I'll make the motion to have a contract extended, renewed for 1 year for legal services with Larry.
I'm going to tend to go with the 2-year one. It would be up to you to second it, Matt.
Yeah, I'm looking at a 2-year one as well, so.
So is there a second for Raj's motion? Not from me.
But we'll still have discussion just under the next motion.
How do we,
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
that motion would die for a lack of a second.
okay,
Right, so now I'll motion
so
to,
with no let me just finish
Okay.
off. So with no second, that motion dies for lack of a second. So, Mr. Wallert?
I'll motion to authorize the township administrator to execute a legal service agreement with law director Larry Barbieri for a 2-year time period.
And I will second that motion. Is there any discussion?
Yes, I asked for 1-year contract. I think it's not anything that Larry is not doing. I think Larry is doing a great job, and he made a lot of lawsuits, recently, won several lawsuits, and you're doing a great job, no doubt about this. I just want to keep it 1 year and, keep extending, just like we did in the past. Then I feel I think my fellow trustees will support me. I know they didn't support me the first time. After the discussions, they may change their mind. It's up to them. My rationale is, you do a good job. Keep it 1 year. Keep on doing the great job. The next year we'll renew it. That gives you some kind of motivation for you to keep on doing a good work. That's the basic thing. There's no doubt I undermine your work. Like I said, you're doing a great job. I just keep it 1 year so that you keep on doing a great job. The next year comes, then we're ready extend your contract for a second year. That's been in the past. I'd like to keep that way. I hope my fellow trustees will understand this concept, and that kind of encourages your law firm. Keep doing a good job. That's all, the basic thing. Keep on doing it and let people see this. You do a good job. And then next year come, we extend our contract. I hope these two guys will understand that logic, go from there.
I sure appreciate it, Raj. Larry, you've every case you've been on, you've won. You've done a great job of defending the township, of reviewing the different things that come before the trustees, and I appreciate your work. And was there an increase in this?
No.
I would just as soon lock in at these rates then for the next 2 years, when everything you've done, you've won, and the price isn't going up. So to me, it's a great win. Was there other discussion?
Yeah, so I think this is one of those hard situations. Because I think that Larry does a great job. Scott does a great job. I put a lot of credit to what Raj says. I think he makes some very significant points. This is one of those things where kind of waffled about it. When I got the packet, I kind of went back and forth in my mind over and over again. And I guess, and Raj has made a compelling case for a 1 year, especially to somebody that's worked under, 24 one-year contracts in my life. So, however, I think that the thing that really kind of maybe moves the pendulum for me is the fact that the longevity of Larry in being here, and the fact that we do lock him in for a price for 2 years, for the same price, 2 years. If this had been first or second year, I don't know that I'd be willing to do that. So, it's a difficult decision, and Raj, I think you made a compelling argument. I do understand what you're saying, and it's weighed either way, but I think I'm supporting a 2-year extension.
Was there any other discussion?
None.
Hearing none, Mr. Baker, please call for a vote.
Mr. Rajagopal?
I'll go for 1 year, but I will not go for 2 years. I say no.
Mr. Unger?
Aye.
Mr. Waller?
Aye.
The motion carries 2-1. Next item.
Thank you, Board. Next item on the agenda is a motion to authorize the Township Administrator to execute a master services agreement with Abercrombie and Associates, Brandstetter Carroll Incorporated, Carpenter Marty Transportation, Immersion Design, IBI Group, Integrated Engineering, MKSK, KZF Design, Richland Engineering Ltd., the Kleiningers Group, and MSP Design for the provision of professional services related to architecture, engineering, surveying, planning, landscape architecture, urban design, and related services. You'll recall that on September 8th, you adopted a motion unanimously to authorize the release for a request for qualifications. We received 12 responses from firms throughout the region. One response to the RFQ was past the deadline, and so that was considered ineligible. And so we reviewed all 11 eligible responses to that RFQ and determined that all eligible responsive firms were qualified. What this means, in a nutshell, is we're going to enter into agreements with these 11 firms called a master services agreement that pre-qualifies them as capable of performing services to our standard, right? Then, when we have a project, say for example the common circle head wall project, which required engineering services, we can just go to one of these pre-qualified firms and execute what's called a service order. So we would say, hey, we want to build this head wall project. Will you guys perform at the prices that you agreed to in the MSA? Then we can come back to you, the board, for authorization to execute the service order, and then we just move forward. So what it does is it shaves off a huge amount of procurement time in procuring these types of services, making government more efficient and go faster.
Well, I would like to get the discussion to the floor, so I will motion to authorize the Township Administrator to execute a master services agreement with the firms you've named. It's been motioned and seconded. So for discussion, so in the case of the head wall or any other project, you would go to the fifth one on the list. I'm not going to say anybody's name, and talk to them, and that's an area where they specialize, and they would say, yes, we'll design this head wall for the design cost should be around $15,000, let's say. So at that point, would you bring that to the board to get that approved?
The service order, yes.
So this doesn't allow you to just go ahead and authorize, for an example, a $15,000 expenditure. This only just pre-qualifies those groups. You've looked into them. They're insured. They've got a reputation.
Yes.
So
And it allows
it
us,
doesn't authorize you to spend any money.
right, in the alternative, and what we have done in the past is, we go through this long procurement process for each individual project. So each project we say, okay, head wall, who's good at head walls? Let's go do a procurement process for head walls. This clears all those hurdles, and it pre-qualifies everybody, so we can just get to the point of, okay, we need sidewalks designed for Pippin. Who's good at sidewalks? We'll go get a service order with them, bring it to the Board of Trustees, you guys authorize it, and then we execute that service order pursuant to the master services agreement.
Mr. Mills, I'm sorry, go ahead, Ralph. I'm still, for some reason, I'm having a disconnect with this, and I did the first time that it came up too. So let's use this sidewalk on Pippin thing. How many of these firms do designs of sidewalk, for instance, that are listed in here?
How many firms design sidewalks?
No, that are listed in this master services agreement.
I see 4 of them that I'm aware of.
Okay, so let's say that's 4, just for sake of argument. And we give the go-ahead, hey, we want sidewalk on Pippin. Do you go to 1, 2, 3, or 4 of these groups? Do you say, I want a bid?
So in the master services agreement and in the qualification process, they have submitted yeah, it's on. They have submitted a set of costs per hour per employee type. So a principal will charge at $160 an hour, or an associate will charge at $120 an hour. So then when it comes to designing a sidewalk, we would go to their qualification book and find out which one we think would be the best person or best firm for this particular job, and ask them to put together a proposal. How many hours of principal time, how many hours of associate time, how many hours of incidentals, et cetera. And then we bring that service order to you.
You would go to 1, or you would go to all 4, for instance?
We'd only have to go to 1.
But there would be nothing to stop you from, say,
Yeah, there's nothing.
if you wanted to get 3 bids from 3 of these companies, there'd be nothing to stop you from doing that. So it would save the process of going and doing an RFP on every job. You could go straight to the bidding if you wanted to.
Yeah. The
Because
goal,
ordinarily, you do the RFP first and then you do the bidding. And if you actually wanted to, if it was going to be a big job and you wanted to get 3 bids, then you could ask 3 of the companies to bid.
And if some other company came along in a year and wanted to get on our vendor list, you would bring us another.
we'd probably keep this list for a number of years, so maybe 3 years or so. And is what I believe, Jeff, that's what we've been talking about, is 3 years. And keeping this list for 3 years, opening it up in the next 3 years, and yeah, the point here is, government is very slow, and can we get, you guys want to do projects, can we get projects done faster and more efficiently?
So is that 3 years part of the motion?
No, it's just what we have been, no, there's nothing in this that restricts us to 3 years. It's just operationally, when we
Right.
conceptualize how this is going to work, in 3 years, we do it again.
So how long are these prices from these different vendors good for under this master service agreement? Is it a 1-year period, or?
It's good until they're good.
So could they then, let's say, I don't know, something goes up,
Then we wouldn't use them. Or
they would contact us and say,
so if we were trying to get a service order, so if we wanted to do a project and they came back with prices that were higher than what they proposed to us, well, then we'd either say no thank you, or say, okay, that the value is still there.
okay, so let's say there's a drawback in the economy, they've already quoted these prices, they're not going down. Or they would contact us and say, look, we've changed our fee structure.
Well, then they would be in violation of the agreement, wouldn't they?
Yeah, and this doesn't mean we have to use any of these people.
I
So
get
if
that,
the-
yeah.
So if we didn't like what they were proposing, we would say no. Well, let me go to a different vendor.
No, I get that part. I guess I just, what other townships or municipalities or anyone in the area uses a master service agreement? Can you find that out, or do you know offhand, or?
Off the top, I didn't benchmark this. It was just an attempt to.
Okay, because, usually, the stuff you bring us is usually the stuff in the journals and
Yeah.
it's modern stuff,
Other communities do this.
okay. Here's my fear, to be honest, is that we've closed the competitive process to just these firms. And I don't know, maybe you could respond to my fear.
That's what my response would be, and I'm not an expert. Well, I've done a lot of these.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of firms.
Okay,
And if you go out for a bid, normally you might get 4 or 5 or 3 bids. That's usually about all you get. So, you've got quite a selection of firms here on this master list.
And for example, tomorrow, so we have a $750,000 sidewalk grant, right, that is on a timeline.
right.
And so tomorrow, with your approval, I will send a master services agreement to, for example, KZF Design for the Colerain Avenue, John Rose to Shady Crest project, because they were integral in designing the project and getting us the money, and they are very familiar with the project. And then I can get the service order back to you guys at the next trustee meeting, and that project can continue to march forward on time.
So for an amount of 750,000, it would just go to one then?
So that's,
It's a design to this.
this is for the design, and I
okay.
believe that the design probably will come back at about $200,000 for a $1.4 million project. Then there's construction costs that are the 750 plus our 400 and whatever.
And you know, one of the things about this type of thing is these engineering groups, they know where the grants are and they know where to go out and find stuff. So and maybe we'll get to a point where we say, as I think on the fly here, yeah, if this was a 3-year agreement that ran through the 21, 22, 23 or whatever, I would be fine with that if we were to decide to amend this. But one of the good things about doing this is every one of these folks, and they're all familiar looking firms, they know where grants are at. And if they come to you 6 months from now and say, Jeff, I know where to get a $400,000 grant, if you can come up with half that, we can get this other project done, because you're actually, because they want to find somebody that wants to work with them and help us find outside funds to do projects. So I think it's a good thing that what you're doing here. And
competition, I mean, like Mr. Barbier said, we have lots of opportunities to price check, and they've submitted their hourly rates, and so there's nothing that would prevent us from getting multiple bids if that's what we wanted to do.
And on a large project, they would help you develop a bid spec
Yes.
for the outfit that's going to do the construction. So, you know, some of these jobs, they may only charge you $15,000 or $20,000 to manage a design build project, and then they would help, you know, get the bid specs out, select the best bid for you, and then, because in order to do a design build project, you need a criterion engineer or a criterion architect. And these groups could serve as in that function on any design build project you do. And I think Megaland was a design build project, right?
I'm not sure.
KCF was involved in that, weren't they?
No.
No, the urban,
But I thought so. Well, any design build project you do, you need a criterion engineer, and that criterion engineer then helps develop the bid specs, helps you pick the best bid, the lowest and best bid, and all those kinds of things.
okay.
so there is no, once we approve this, which that's the direction I'm heading, is there a time limit to it, or what would you do? Would you come back to the trustees whoever's on the board in 23 and?
Well, if the board asked me next year to do it again, I would do it again. But sometimes there is fatigue in putting, I mean, these these RFQ
Right.
responses are about this thick.
And I
each one.
appreciate the time these firms have put into responding to our.
That's right.
To any vendor that responds to our invitation to bid.
Yes.
And especially when they look at this list and go, wow, I'm one of 10 or however many are on here.
Yes.
So they've put a lot of effort into
Huge.
a 10% chance of getting some work.
That's
So-
right. And so that's why, you know, that's why I say the 3-year time period. But if you were to say, Jeff, we'd like to do the RFQ again, I would do the RFQ again. There's nothing to prevent us from doing it next year or in 2 years, but from our perspective, the 3-year time horizon seems to make the most sense.
Okay.
Like, you explained pretty much.
Raj, Mike?
Everything. Like, way I understand it, it's not binding.
No.
It's no binding at all,
No.
the 3-year period.
Right.
Next year, we'll say trustees, you know, you find out one of the guys did a lousy job, you can eliminate. So, my second question, Jeff, the names you have in this list, and you did a thorough analysis of their workmanship,
Yes.
their jobs, and that's how you select them, right?
Yes.
And if you find out one project, like a sidewalk or any project, you feel that bid is too high, you still go out bid again.
We'd get a different,
We don't have any binding contract with these
Nothing.
people.
Nothing.
Did you sign the contract?
There's-
Then we have to go to them, right?
there's a master services agreement that just says, it's all the fine print. So these are what the architect or engineer's responsibilities are. This is the additional services that they provide, the owner's responsibilities, et cetera, copyright issues, claims and disputes, how those will be dealt with. This just gets all of the mechanics of contracting out of the way so that we can go faster to getting the projects done. And it doesn't commit us to doing anything. And frankly, if there was a project that was so specialized that none of these folks were capable or able to do, we could still do another procurement process and get that firm that is specialized in like Space Needles. If we were gonna build a Space Needle in Colerain Township and these firms can't do it, we could do a procurement process that this doesn't even bind us to these. We could do a whole nother procurement process for Space Needle engineer.
We already decided on the Fort Dunlap thing for Megaland. I don't
No,
know.
no,
I don't know where he's, I don't know where he's coming from.
I know, exactly. No, so
Okay,
I'm
I've-
saying this doesn't commit us to doing anything at all.
Okay,
Yeah.
just,
I just-
this is your, I would say in a synopsis, is a point of reference that it reduces in the future
Yes.
to go to the proposed, RPF.
That's exactly right. Yep. So it makes us more efficient and gets us to be able to do the projects that you want us to do in a faster way.
Thank you.
Yep.
You beat on him a little bit more. Beat on him a little bit.
No.
Is there any other discussion? Okay, please call for a vote, Mr. Baker.
Mr. Rajagopal,
Aye.
Mr. Unger,
Aye.
Mr. Wall.
I'm going to cautiously dip my toe into the eye waters on this.
All right. Hopefully, we will not disappoint you here. All right. So the next item is a motion authorizing the township administrator to execute a contract with Waycross Community Media for video production and distribution services. In the past, the board has used the services of Waycross Community Media to produce cable casts and webcasts that undoubted many are watching right now. Waycross has submitted a proposal to extend the term of these services at a cost of $60,000 per year. The term of the contract is 2 years, beginning next March and ending February of 2023. Recommendation is adoption.
A motion that we authorize the township administrator to execute a contract with Waycross Community Media for video production and distribution services.
I'll second that.
It's been motioned and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Hey, Dan, how was they always $60,000 a year? Or was it started like a
It
50,000?
was $55,000.
55,000?
Yes, and they actually submitted a $55,000 proposal. I asked them to add a number of additional communications-related items to the contract, which would include a 90-second video summary following every trustee meeting. So one of the things that let me start over again. One of the things that we need to improve on, that we hear about all the time, is our communications. And Waycross does a fantastic job. This year of all years, we've been able to appreciate the great job that Waycross has done. Think back to the early days of COVID when all of our department heads were producing videos and we were going out to businesses and talking to businesses about, how they are able to cope with CARES. Waycross was always there. One of the things that I think would be very beneficial to communicating the work that the Board of Trustees do is doing a 90-second summary at the end of every meeting of what you all had accomplished in that meeting. And even maybe we could get more engagement with the community if we did a 90-second preview of here's what the board is going to discuss. Oftentimes a 5-hour meeting is daunting to look at on Waycross, but if you want to know what's going on with Colerain, here's the headlines kind of thing. I asked them to include both of those, and I also asked them to include a 5-minute internal staff video each week. So the idea of communicating within our organization needing to improve. I hear all the time that the folks out on the front lines don't know the work that you all are doing and the direction that you all are trying to get us to go in. Through these sort of internal videos, we can communicate the work that you are doing and the values and the priorities that you have all the way down through the organization. So for those 3 additional things, that cost $5,000 per year.
And I would like to mention that those of us that have cable or internet services, mine at home is through Spectrum, there's a franchise fee on my bill every month. I want to say it's about $1.07 or whatever it is. It's right in that range. And the township, and it's been a year or two since I asked that question, but Mr. Baker could look it up later. I want to say that back when Heather was here, there was almost $700,000 in income
Yes, sir.
that came from cable franchise fees and other fees that are not tax dollars. And so we are paying for this and providing a service to those that have cable or internet service through either Cincinnati Bell or Spectrum or whoever the other providers are. And those that do not have cable or internet service are not paying for this. So this is money that comes out of the franchise fees that are collected. Am I correct on that?
Yes, that's absolutely
Okay,
right.
and so it's not paid for with tax dollars. And as far as Waycross, they've done a stellar job of broadcasting our meetings, getting information out to the community. I think it's a great idea to have a third party doing it rather than somebody internally. And because they don't edit anything out, it's just all there. And I wholeheartedly will support this. Was there any other discussion?
Yeah, I got yeah, they're doing a great job. Did any type of survey? How many people this, for example, this meeting, they reach out to or watching? You know, if you see any kind of television network, they always have the data. You know, how many people they reached out or how many viewers, or do they have some type of data? And if they do, I'd like to see that. Second thing, most often, frequently, the people complaining their sound system, they can hear it, they have a problem with that. What do they have to rectify the problem? There's most of the meetings, people hearing this telling us, telling me, you know, they had a hard time hearing the sounds. Sounds is pretty bad, you know. And sometimes they can hear almost half the meeting. So what solution they have to rectify the problem?
Yep,
It
good
won't happen in
question.
the future.
Yep, good question. So they are going to upgrade the production equipment in the trustee chamber in 2021. So that would mean I would take that to mean the video cameras and the audio will be updated in 2021 if this contract were to be adopted. And then on data, I think that's a great point. I would love to see those numbers too. And so maybe we can add a reporting requirement to the contract. Just, you know, I don't know if they can tell how many people are watching on cable, but they can certainly tell how many people are watching on their website and through YouTube. And maybe if we had quarterly reporting on numbers and outreach.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Was there any other discussion?
None.
Mr. Baker, please call for a vote.
Mr. Rajagopal,
Aye.
Mr. Unger,
Aye.
Mr. Waller.
Aye.
Thank you,
Thank
Board.
you.
The next item is a resolution authorizing the payment of the statutorily required contribution to OPERS for the Director of Finance. In Mr. McElravy's contract, that personal services agreement stipulates that following a one-year probationary period, the township will pick up and pay 50% of the employee's contribution to PERS and be treated as a fringe benefit. This resolution is required by the township to permit said contribution, and that would go into effect on November 4th, 2020, Mr. McElravy's one-year anniversary date. The recommendation is to adopt, and the resolution title is Resolution that Colerain Township will pick up and pay the statutorily required contribution to the Ohio Public Employees Retirement System for the Director of Finance pursuant to IRC Section 414H2.
I will resolve to authorize the payment of statutory required contribution to OPERS for the Director of Finance.
I will second it. It's been motioned and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Mike, you're doing a great job. You deserve it. I'm sorry, Mike, Jeff.
How do you get Jeff wrong?
Sorry.
It's a room full of Jeff.
Sorry, Jeff, did you look at me? Sorry. Jeff.
Was there any other discussion?
Mike, good job.
Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Baker, please call for a vote.
Mr. Rajagopal,
Aye.
Mr. Unger,
Aye.
Mr. Waller.
Aye.
Very good. Thank you, Board. The next item is an odd one, and thankfully, we only have to deal with this issue once every 11 or 10 or so years. Colerain Township pays its employees bi-weekly, which means that every other Friday, Colerain Township employees get paid. That means that there are 26 pay periods in a 52-week year. But this is 2020, and everything is weird. And the calendar has aligned here to such that there are 27 pay periods in 2020. Colerain Township has 280 rostered positions, right? And most of them are wage earners that are not exempt from the Fair Labor Standards Act, the FLSA. FLSA requires us to pay 270 of these 280 employees. 97% of our workforce will be paid for the 27th week, or the 27th pay period, because they, like everybody, worked the whole year. And the quirk of the
Well,
calendar
they're hourly employees, right?
not all. So there are hourly employees, but there are some exempt, I'll get there. There are some exempt employees who have been hired into their position, but it has been within the last year, and they have not earned their salary that you all have set. So for example, if we hire somebody in June and their salary is $90,000, we don't take $90,000 and divide it by 13 pay periods half the year. We pay them 90,000 divided by 26 and pay them that way. So there are 10 employees of the 280, so 3.5% of the employees, that the township is not obligated to pay the 27th pay on. And that is the administrator, the assistant administrator, the finance director, the planning director, one of the assistant fire chiefs, the assistant chief for administration, chief of police, all 3 police lieutenants, and the public services director. So in an effort to, and many townships are not taking the step of going to the Board of Trustees and saying, please authorize the 27th pay for employees, but we are, because we feel like it's the right thing to do, and certainly when the auditors come asking, we believe it's the right thing to do. But the bottom line is, if you vote for authorizing the 27th pay, we will pay all 280 employees for their time this year, that 27th pay, which has already been budgeted, and the board has already appropriated these funds. If you vote against the 27th pay, we will pay 270 employees for the 27th pay, as we have to, and those 10 employees will not be paid on the 27th pay. And the gross cost, gross as in salary plus fringe, for those 10 employees for that 27th pay period is $38,329.52. So I've had individual conversations with each of you, and I think to each of you I have said that smart people can come down on both sides of this issue. It is my belief that it is an equitable and the fair thing to do to treat all employees the same, and to authorize the 27th pay for all 280 rostered positions. That's my position.
So, Larry, can we discuss this without bringing it to the floor, or does it have to come to the floor?
The motion first?
I think you should probably do a motion and a second under Robert's rules, and then you can discuss it.
Okay.
I move the motion.
To the floor. Motion to authorize 27th pay for 2020.
And I'll second it to get it to the floor for discussion. The hourly employees should be paid as they regularly are. If they worked hours in the last half of December, then they would get paid as normal. The salaried employees that have a fixed amount for their salary, such as you, I want to meet that obligation right up to the last dollar in 2020. So let's say, for a round even number, your salary is $120,000 a year. Once you were paid that $120,000, then we would be overpaying your contract amount in 2020. And in fact, the auditors could come along and say, Mills was contracted at 120, yet you paid him an extra 2-week pay, which would be $6,000. So you ended up paying him 126. But
That's why we're coming to you.
right. So My thought on this, as I discussed with you, would be to move the pay period for those 8 or 10. I thought it was 8, and you say that it's 10. Move that pay to the first available date in January of 21, so that everybody's W-2, those 8 or 10 people, not the larger group, that their money would work out to exact contracted amount. Not that I mean, that way you're getting paid what the agreed upon amount is, and just so that, if you have money coming out of your checking account or whatever, we could take the next year. Is there 26 pay periods in 21?
It depends on what you do tonight. If what you're suggesting is to push the 27th pay of 20 into 21, then there would be 27 pays.
I would do that for the 8 employees. I wouldn't, or the 8 or 10. The folks that have an hour of the expectation that there's going to be money hitting their checking account every 2 weeks are hourly employees that worked or took a vacation or took a sick day, and whatever combination of funds goes into their checking account every week. I would want them to be paid, but those folks that have a hard, fast amount in their contract, once the Board of Trustees has paid, and I'll use you as an example, once we've paid you your 2020 contracted amount because you were here for a full year, I don't, and it's nothing personal, I just think that would need to be moved to next year so that your W-2 works out with the contracted amount, as opposed to, giving you the extra funds, and then your extra funds would put your W-2 in excess of your contracted amount. I just think it's a divide next year into 27 pay periods for you 8, or else if you can do it in the software, have those 8 or 10 employees paid on January 2nd, and then do the calculations so that their 2021 contract amount works out over the number of pay periods that are in 2021. Does that make sense?
I understand where you're coming from. Sometimes it's easy, and I've said this to each of you also, take me out of the equation. Like, say, don't pay me the 27th pay, but from my perspective, we've all worked the same amount of time, and the W-2s of the hourly employees are going to be higher in 2020 with 27 pays than it was in last year. 1/26th more, or so don't pay
those
me
hourly employees though.
What's that?
Aren't most of them hourly employees, like our police
Oh,
and
yeah,
fire and
huge, yeah.
our public works
Yes.
folks? And
But I'm just saying we all work the same days. And so I'm saying don't pay me the 27th pay, but I think that it makes a whole lot of sense to say, to our planning director or to our assistant fire chief, we value your work as much as everybody else's. We're going to pay everybody else the 27th pay at additional cost to the township, which we budgeted and appropriated. You are as valuable to us as those other folks are. And I think that by separating it out, I think it sends a bad message. I think it's a small price to pay for the work that these guys do, and please, and don't pay me. Like, let me be the person that doesn't get the 27th pay, but consider the others.
well, it's not. You're certainly very much appreciated, and all of our employees are. And Raj and I have been here through we've seen everybody in administration change out except Chief Denny. So it has our fingerprints on it that we hired you guys, and I think you're well worth the negotiated contract amount. I'm just concerned that by adding more money, and the way the IRS or anybody else would look at it is, we contracted you for X amount, and in 2020 you got paid Y amount. So what would happen in 21? Would you go back to, I'm just using the figure of 120 because it's divisible by the 12 months. So if you went back to the 120 for 2021, or would next year just be 114?
It would
Would
be,
that how would I account for that?
just like everybody else, there would just be an additional pay period added in. That's why we had to budget this way this year, because this happens once every 10 years. It's interesting. There's a human resources organization consultancy that does a survey on this, and they found that 86% of all the respondents in these are private sector folks, they just pay the 27th pay because they realize that it's a quirk of the calendar. Everybody is working all of those hours, whether you're salaried or hourly. So anyway, yeah, so it would be next year, if you were to pay the 27th pay this year, it would be the contracted amount next year.
And what day would that pay go out?
The
I don't have a
31st
calendar in front of me. Would it be
The
December?
27th pay will fall for the 270 employees on the 31st of December. That's when the 27th
So,
pay.
so if you moved it back 2 days, that would resolve the problem for everybody, for the 8 or 10. The hourly employees that are expecting to get paid, is December 31st a Friday?
That just means that we'll have the same conversation next year.
Yeah, it'll be 27 next year, yeah.
Yeah.
But you'd be able to take your 120 and divide it by 27 and get the right amount every week so that at the end of 21, you'd be paid correctly.
That's one option. You do that. But again, it's
Please don't take it personally.
yeah, no,
It's
I
just
get it. For me, it's just an
math
equity
thing, and
it's an equity issue. It's like, why would you single out these, let's say 9. Let's say, I won't take it. These 9 employees, why would you treat these 9 employees different from the other 270? And look, I don't want to be argumentative
Oh,
this
no,
is just
well, don't take it. It's just,
me advocating for the staff.
and I love our staff. But, I mean, if I have if you were making a car payment every month, and because there was an extra periodic payment, would you go ahead and make it, or say, no, I paid my 2020 car payment? I'm just because the 31st falls on a Friday, I'm not going to make an extra payment.
I'd do whatever the bank says. Because I don't want to get
Well,
sideways with the bank.
I mean, and thank you for separating. It's nothing personal at all. It's just keeping,
Yep.
at the end of the year, if we've contracted you for one amount and we've met the Board of Trustees has met our obligation to our 8 to 10 people that this affects, I mean, to me, that's a very nice raise to get an extra, in the case of my example, an extra $6,000.
Yep. And 270 employees will get that raise. And 10 will
But I mean,
not.
if it's an hourly employee and he or she worked, 40 hours the week of the 15th of December and another 40 hours the week of the 22nd of December, and then they would expect to be paid for their hourly wage. So how many people do we have that are salaried versus?
If I were to guess, I would guess
You say about 10?
in the 30. I would guess in the 30s that are. Mr. Weichbach, can you help me with, or Mr. McElravy? I don't know the answer to that off the top.
I mean, and Jeff, don't take it personally. I just want the W-2s to work out
They will, and there
with the contracts.
are other communities that aren't even having this conversation, like that aren't even they're just paying the 27th pay because that's the decision that they made, and they aren't worried about the auditor. They're not worried about. We wanted to make sure that if we were going to do this, we would have an open conversation about it, make sure everybody's on board, or not, and so that's what we're doing here.
I'd like to hear from the other trustees. What do you guys think about this?
Well, I think a pretty appropriate question is how many people are salary that don't fit in that 10 group?
It's probably only 4 or 5 more.
And when we say salaried, they would have to be FLSA exempt. So they have to be exempt from FLSA, and they were hired with not an hourly rate, but a salary rate. And the other interesting thing is, many communities identify salary as on a biweekly basis. So they say, we'll hire you in at $1,500 paid biweekly, and that's how they get around this issue of
Right.
of every and then in that case, on the 27th paid year, everybody gets paid.
Well, that begs the question then, how many have contracts like you do?
Let's see, 1, 2, 3. 3.
Because that's what I'm getting at. If the employees that don't have contracts and can be dismissed at will, they should get paid. But the ones that have contracts that call out a specific amount of compensation,
Okay.
such as you, nothing personal.
Yeah.
I think you're doing a great job, but the ones that have a contract, once the Board of Trustees has met that obligation, you know, we've paid you, we get to the 2 weeks, whatever it is, the 17th, or whatever that Friday would be, and we've hit our mark, and and I would ask Mr. McElravy to make sure we're hitting that mark exactly. Then we've paid you what we contracted for in 2020, and
I think that you know, look, that makes some sense. If you limit those who are not going to get the 27th pay to those with whom you have a personal services agreement with, that makes a lot of sense.
and that's kind of what I was getting to, was
Okay.
ones that we have
Yeah.
a contracted amount that we've agreed on.
Chief Denny has a contract.
Well, he's not even here to defend himself at this point.
His language is slightly different for his salary than Mercer I's because it does not stipulate. I don't believe it stipulates dollar.
Okay.
Here's the equity issue for me on a different basis. So, I mean, we'll use your numbers of 120 and 6, you know.
That's
that-
half a month's pay, the
Right,
6.
yeah,
Okay.
goes from 120 to 126. What about the per hour worker that maybe not contracted but knows that they're gonna work, 2,000 hours a year or something? Whatever, $10 an hour, just to do the math. They make 20 grand, they're not getting 6% extra.
Yes, they are.
Well, they're still working the same amount of hours.
Wow.
No, but they're getting paid. So the 27th pay means that at the beginning of the year, in 2020, they were paid for 14 days of 19. So the first pay period, so their W-2 in 2020 is going to be higher by 1/26th than it was last year and next year. So they are getting that. They are getting more this year than they did last year.
Right, but their Christmas week wouldn't pay till January anyway, would it?
No, that's the trick, is that 27 times a Friday falls in this calendar year, and it happens once in a blue
And
moon.
I'm fine with it for the hourly employees.
Sure.
But for the personal services contract employees that have a specific amount on their contract, and it's nothing personal, I think you guys are doing a fantastic job, and this township is light years ahead of
Yep.
where it was before you got here, but,
That's fair.
and for no other reason, I just want the W-2s for a personal services contract employee such
Okay.
as yourself
Yep.
to match up.
Okay, that's fair. And just as a final point, Springfield Township, Westchester Township, Greene Township, Miami Township, Sharonville, they're all paying the 27 pay for everybody, just as a final point. But I think that makes sense, and I'm fine with that. I think that,
Because I want to 100% meet our obligation to you, of our contractual obligation.
Yep.
And I think, yeah, go ahead, Raj, sure. Mike, turn on your mic, Raj.
The 27th, okay, in fairness, okay, what contract said, I'm not thinking about that. In fairness, you get paid 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks, you get paycheck.
yeah,
Okay, if you don't get the 27th paycheck, you're gone. You don't get any check, the
Right.
27th.
from the 15th of December until about the 15th
Yeah,
of
you
January.
work that day.
Yes,
You deserve it. We are the people that work, deserve it. I think county, I remember that county we had, long time ago. Okay, remember that? They paid it,
So the way the county did it was they actually socked away a portion of money every year into a separate account. So then when that year 10 or 11 showed up, all that money was saved up over the course of 10 or 11 years. We did it a little different budgetarily. This year it happened, so we budgeted for it out of reserves.
Thank you, yeah. When we agree the contract for a job, okay, we didn't foresee this 27th paycheck thing. We just give a flat, for example, 120,000 thing. But you get paid, all these guys, all these people, you get paid every 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks, you pay period, you get your check, take care of your family. Take care of family, take care of your house mortgage, whatever the expense you have. I think that's reasonable, that you guys work the 2 weeks, the last period, the 14th to 21, you deserve a paycheck because you got to meet your obligation, family. That's our duty to help you guys. Okay? I think it's reasonable The 27th paycheck happened only once in 10 years. We don't know, but we didn't foresee it. It just happened. We just came into the resolution. But my argument is, you get paid every 2 weeks as you worked. Make sense?
Yes.
So the 2 weeks you guys worked, got to be paid. If a 27th paycheck happened to be that way, we don't make the calendars, so be it. So that's my argument. That I think that 27th is a paycheck that you guys worked. You get your paycheck, meet your family obligations.
So what would happen,
What do they do? W-2 that that's you got to report it. End of the year, that's our additional income. You got to report it. You got to pay tax for it, income tax. Does that make sense? That's my simple solution, simple answer for this.
so what would happen in 21 then with your hypothetical $120,000? You would, if there's 26 pay periods in 21, then you would get paid every 2 weeks and make 120 in 21 versus making 126 and 20. I just want the W-2s to match up with the contracted amounts. There's nothing, I love you guys, I think you're doing a great job, I really, really do. But it's if we overpay on any contract, I mean, a lot of our employees don't have the benefit of a contract with the Board of Trustees. They're just here and they could be gone any week. And so how many is it? Is it you and Jeff and?
Jeff and the 3 Jeffs and Chief Denny.
Okay.
Do you have any other discussion? Any other discussion?
No. We'll call for the.
Call for a vote.
What are we voting on?
We're voting on authorizing a 20, well, that's a great question.
The motion that was made was to authorize the 27th pay, and that would be for everybody. So if that's the motion that's on the floor, so if that's different from what you,
I would like to,
That's the motion on the floor, and it's been seconded.
All right, I'm going to withdraw that motion.
no,
Wait a minute. Let's understand here. This 27th paycheck, when you say everybody, that includes the people on that regular payroll and also that's everybody.
that's the motion that's on the floor.
Okay.
Yep.
We'll keep that motion.
I would like to
we
motion,
already,
it's on the
motion on the
floor,
floor.
for sure.
So we're in the discussion. Okay, we call for the vote.
I would like the motion to amend it to the 3 or 4 people that have personal services contracts that give a defined amount of income for 2020. I would like to pull those, you say it's 4, I'd like to pull those 4 people out of the motion.
I disagree with that.
I will call the question, I will second it and call the question on the amendment.
Wait a second, I want to make sure I understand what you're getting. There's a motion to amend, which takes precedence, and now you're seconding his motion to amend? Okay.
We're just voting on the motion to amend at this point.
What are you going to amend now?
You're
I want
voting on-
to take the 4 people that have personal services contract.
Well, let's make,
To be
let's
removed?
make sure I know what you guys think you're voting on here.
We're voting on the amendment, not the
Yep.
motion.
You're saying that you're voting on whether to allow an amendment.
Right.
Okay, so you're not, that's all that you're voting on now is whether to allow an amendment to the original motion.
Yes.
Okay.
And the amendment is for
No,
the,
we're not voting, you're not voting on that yet, right?
we're just,
You're just voting on whether to
Amendment.
allow an amendment to
Yes.
the original
And then
motion.
we have to vote on the amendment.
And then you'll vote on the amendment
Yeah.
next.
okay, so did I motion it?
You,
I motion that we consider amending the resolution, is that the correct way?
And I'll
Okay.
second that.
Okay, so that's, so now I would ask Mr. Baker to call for a vote,
yes.
and that's just to allow us to amend the resolution to exclude those,
No, just to amend.
just to amend, okay.
Yeah.
This is just a motion to amend, please call for a vote, Mr. Baker.
Mr. Rajagopal,
No.
Mr. Unger,
Yes?
Mr. Waller.
Yes.
Okay, so now we have a motion,
Now you make the amended motion.
I would, but I need to know, is it 3 or 4, or just the 4 people with personal services contracts?
Maybe say anyone with a personal services contract. That would, then we don't limit ourselves if we miss one as we sit here tonight.
So you would move to add a 27th pay period for every employee except those who have personal services contracts.
That give a defined amount of compensation for 2020.
Okay.
So tell me if I'm right here. So I would motion that we authorize a 27th pay period in 2020, except for those few employees that have personal services contracts that give a defined amount of compensation for 2020. Is that,
That sounds good.
so I would need a second
I'll
for that.
second.
As that's been motioned and seconded, is there any discussion?
Yeah, I'm just going to say, I had a chance to chime in a lot on this. This is just an awful decision to make either way. I think that my default is on the contracted amount, you know, it's not a reflection of the work that you guys do. It's just a reflection of, I feel, a fiscal responsibility to go with the contracted amount. And that really is, that's a hard decision to make.
It's very difficult,
Yeah,
and please
'cause-
don't ever interpret it any other way. It's just we have a contracted amount, and I would ask our finance director to make sure that we meet that contracted amount, so that the 2020 W-2 would reflect that you were paid in full the contracted amount.
Let me ask a legal, Larry. Okay, Dan's argument is, the 27 money paycheck goes beyond what the contracted amount we hired these guys for, correct? But it's legal because the 27th came, we didn't foresee it. We never saw that 27th is coming. But this come up now, 27th, now it's illegal to go ahead and authorize it.
It would be legal for you to authorize it, yes. There would be nothing
Nothing
legally
illegal,
improper. No.
go beyond the contracted amount.
No, it would not be illegal. I think it would not be illegal, because that's why Jeff brought it to you all for a vote, so that if an audit looked at it, they'd understand that you considered the issue and decided to give them the money for the 27th pay period. You're free to give them a bonus if you want. I mean, as long as it comes before you for a vote, there's nothing illegal or improper about it, doing it.
Okay, thank you.
So what I'm proposing, now that we've got it to this point, is that legal to exclude those
Yes,
with personal services amounts that define a very specific amount that they'll be paid in 2020?
yes, because the FLSA does not obligate you to pay them. So it is legal.
And to the best of your knowledge, it's 3 or 4 or maybe 5 people.
3 or I would say 4. I don't know the particulars of each contract. I'd have to research, but that's the approximate number, yes.
Right, and I would just ask our finance director to make sure that those with personal services contracts are paid all the way up to in full on their 26th pay period, so that you've got all your funds for 2020. Was there any other discussion? So call for a vote on the amended resolution.
Mr. Rajagopal?
I'm saying no because these guys will lose 2 weeks' paycheck. They need this paycheck, especially in the time of COVID-19. Everybody's suffering. They need that money. They need the paycheck to help the families. They need the paycheck. We are in the situation now. Everybody's hurting. They need that paycheck. So I would say no to this amended motion.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes.
Very good, Board. The next two.
And Jeff, I would ask that if you could come back at the next meeting with how many people that affects.
Absolutely.
Because it's October, and it's we could have something else at the next meeting, but sometime in the next 2 weeks, figure out
Yes.
who is affected by that and because now we've cleared it
late.
for every other employee except for those 3 or 4 that have
too late, Dan.
personal services things. Okay, next item.
Okay, the next 2 items are going to be delivered by Mr. Weckbach. They are first readings on policy resolutions related to capital policy and our inventory and asset policy.
Evening, Board. So before you is a first reading on a resolution adopting a capital policy. So, early on when Jeff McElravy got here, we recognized the fact that he has a background from the Government Finance Officers Association. So in conjunction with Mr. McElravy, as well as a team of internal individuals, we drafted the attached policy, which we think meets and exceeds best practices and will hopefully set us up for success in this budget year. So recommend first reading. I don't know that there's any specific action that they have to take for a first reading.
I think just give the name of the resolution and just say it's a first reading.
Yes, resolution adopting a capital policy. So if you all have any input, insights, or suggestions, I appreciate that feedback.
Capital budgeting policy.
Sorry,
Thank
capital
you.
Budgeting policy, yes.
And
So that if folks know, it is in our agenda for anybody to read.
Yes. Any questions, comments on that first item?
Yeah, we'll read and
Okay.
be prepared for the next meeting. You be on the next meeting?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And then the next item on the agenda is a first reading of a resolution adopting an inventory and asset policy for the township. So similar guys, the difference is instead of having like a cross-collaborative team, we focused on working with other communities outside of Colerain to see what their policies were. And while not many of them had formally adopted policies, most of them told us that their rule of thumb, they like to go and look at your insurance deductible and try to align your inventory according to that. So this will be a good first step, and after this, we'll be able to move forward with the UAN system as serving as our inventory warehouse, so we're going to get more lean and efficient because of this policy in the long run. And again, first reading, so if there are comments, questions, or concerns, please send them my way.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Jeff. Can we, I'd like to motion to take a 5-minute break.
I'll second that.
But I think first, I'd like to motion to amend the agenda. So we can motion to take a 5-minute
I
break.
don't think we need to amend to take a break. Just,
Okay, so can we just take a break, or do we need to motion
you
for
need to
that?
give the time out and time back in.
Yeah, I think you can just take a break, but
Okay, we will take it's 9:47, if we could be back at 9:55.
Good, thanks.
yep.
So we'll take a short break. We've returned from our break. It's 9:55 in the evening. Mr. Baker, would you please call the attendance roll?
Mr. Rajagopal,
Here,
Mr. Unger,
Here,
Mr. Waller.
and go ahead with the next item. Or did you have a question, Raj?
yeah, I asked Larry, I'm going to ask him if I want to adopt a motion or file a motion to reconsider. Should I wait till he finishes presentation is a thing? Or when the agenda item comes 10, before that,
you
can
want
I?
to move to reconsider the last vote about the 27th
Yes, sir.
pay period?
Yes.
Can we do that at the same meeting?
I think you can make the motion, and then it's up to one of you if you want to second it or not.
I think first we probably need to amend the agenda and then make a motion.
So I would point a parliamentary procedure first. Don't you have to be on the? Don't you have to be on the majority side of a motion to reconsider?
I don't know the answer to that,
I believe you do.
in all honesty.
You can vote no, but any trustees can bring a motion on the floor,
I've
correct?
never heard that said. I don't know that,
Let me see your book there, Dean.
I'm fine with it, except I think that once you go through an agenda item and pass it or not pass it, I don't think it can come back at the same meeting.
We did it previously. At the end of the meeting, we reconsider. I remember that.
Same question previously decided.
You know, I'm looking at my Robert's Rules of Order, and it doesn't say a motion to reconsider is a secondary motion. It's a subsidiary motion, rather. It gives examples of to amend, to table, and to postpone. Yeah, there's a motion to reconsider that requires a majority vote. It doesn't say that it can't be done in the same meeting, and this is my PowerPoint from the Secretary of State, or from the Attorney General.
It appears a Google search turns up motion to reconsider. The motion to reconsider can be made by a board member when he or she wishes to ask the entire board to revisit a previous decision made at the same meeting.
Okay, so yes, you can.
Before, I mean, that the motion L has already been decided. So if he wants to come up with a new motion to change something we did in
He wants you
motion
to
L.
All I'm asking, Dan, reconsider.
He made a motion to reconsider your prior motion. So this would be just like your amendment. So if you second it, what you're doing is you're saying that you're going to second his motion to reconsider. It doesn't say what the reconsideration is going to be. It's just whether or not you're willing to second a motion to reconsider the decision you previously made.
So it doesn't negate the decision we've already made?
It does not yet, but it will mean that you would reconsider it.
It says that it must be made by a person who voted on the prevailing side of the motion.
Oh, it does, okay. Well, then you can't make it, Raj.
Say it again? Yes, we made.
Microphone.
The motion to reconsider has to be made by a person who was on the prevailing side of the motion to be reconsidered. So that means that one of the members of the majority in a 2-1 vote would have to make the motion to reconsider.
Turn on your mic, Raj.
So not necessarily one voted no?
Right, you cannot make the motion.
On that Robert Rule of Law you just read, any board members can.
It doesn't say that. It just says a motion to reconsider is it says it's a
Sponsored by
motion.
the,
It says a motion. I have a PowerPoint here.
yeah, would you please read again?
This just says motions that require a majority vote, and it includes a motion to reconsider as a motion that requires a majority vote. But the Robert's Rules of Order also says, apparently, which I wasn't aware of, that only someone who was on the side of the motion that prevailed can make the motion to reconsider, which means you would not be able to.
It's why Mitch McConnell often votes yes on things that you don't think he's going to vote yes on, so he can reconsider things. It's a Mitch McConnell trick.
Yeah, I just asking, reconsider based on the situation, the condition, how it's going to affect the employees. Can I say why I want to say it now?
No,
I can't say it.
you can't make the motion.
No, but I can tell you what I wanted to do. What's the purpose? Can I say the purpose?
I think it's up to the presiding officer here.
Yeah, sure, Raj, but everybody's gonna, based on what already happened,
Yeah.
everybody's getting a 27th pay except for the 3 or 4 people.
Right.
Everybody else is getting their 27th pay. It's just,
The purpose, I'm saying, I can say it now, right? The purpose, this guys, I agree, I understand you really well. We spend a lot of money for every other things. You talk about these guys won't get paid till January 15th. The next paycheck would be the January 15th. 4 weeks. They got to take care of the family. 4 weeks till they see the paychecks. How would you feel, Dan? How would Matt will feel? You don't get any paycheck in 4 weeks. I know these guys are on contract. They get paid every 2 weeks. But the situation is different now. This is unpredictable. Nobody knew about this. But in the 4 weeks, they may have the car payment, they may have the mortgage payment they have to make. Their children going to school, pay for the daycare. All these things for 4 weeks. We are not, all of them are wealthy. We just live and situation now is very bad. And we had to please consider this, because touch your heart and feel how you feel if you don't get a paycheck for 4 weeks. How are you going to pay your house mortgage, your children's daycare? I know we spend a lot of money for everything else. Look at the township, how much money we spent to this paper. We just spent $60,000 for the Waycross. Just boom, here, write a check for them. And we spent a lot of money, everything. We spent $98,000 on the corridor plan, which is, the book is still sitting there. $98,000 corridor, Colerain corridor plan. We spent $25,000 here for the consultant, $25,000 here. Here's how many people we were talking about. That family depend on the paychecks. You got 4 weeks. This guy has to run the family without a paycheck. Matt, how would you feel?
I would say.
It's not. I know it may be a little over what the contract amount is, but this unforeseen circumstance. We never thought it's going to happen, but we caught it. But we want to employ. If you care about employees, you mentioned all the talk. You really care about your employees. They're doing a good job. How can you run these guys? Their lifestyle, their life living 4 weeks without pay. Just think about it.
Well,
I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's fair to say if you care about the employees, you'll give them the raise, because that's essentially what it is. Why don't we give them 10 or 15,000? I think that's a little hitting below the belt on that, Raj.
No,
I'm not. It's the contracted amount. Don't tell me that I don't care about them.
No, you care.
Don't tell me that I don't care about them. Are you going to interrupt? I'm talking now.
Yeah, I'm talking too, because that's not fair.
You don't care about me.
No, I care about everybody. Let's keep the tone down a little bit. I care about everybody.
I don't like the personal attack that I don't care because I won't spend extra money.
It is a personal thing.
Really, it is a personal thing. Why don't you write the check then?
We care about every other people in the world, in the country, in the world.
They're getting the contracted amount. They're not getting cut.
What? What are you going? You're just paying for the work. I know you pay for the contract, 120,000, whatever it is. When we made the contract, we didn't know about this.
What do you mean you didn't know? I keep hearing we didn't know. We didn't know how many weeks were in a year?
Come on, give me a break.
Yeah, give me a break.
Yeah, I'll
sit
give
there
you a
and
break.
personally attack me and say I don't care.
I'm not saying, I'm not attacking you.
Let's keep it in.
I'm just saying, this guy has to work.
I'd like to
4
appeal
weeks.
to the chair. There's no reason he should still be talking. He's not even allowed to bring it up for reconsideration.
I'm not attacking anyone. I'm just saying.
Hey, Raj, why don't,
All right,
let's
move on.
I think what we would need to do
Let's
is,
move on.
okay, we'll move
let's
on
move on.
and discuss it at the next meeting if you wish. Okay, so the next item is old business, discussion of dumping and littering in Colerain.
Yeah, so thank you, board. So at the last meeting, we had a lot of back and forth about different options, different things that we could explore, different pathways that we can move forward with when it came to addressing some of the litter, debris, and trash issues that we were noticing on commercial corridors. And so we dug in, we looked at a few different specific things that we could do, things that we might be able to do, and we've come up with some alternatives. But in order to move forward, we need to know exactly what you all would want to see in a motion, say at the next meeting. So if the desire of the board is to add positions, or what could that mean? It could mean litter pickup individuals, it could mean additional resources to code enforcement, it could mean, say, an environmental crimes person in the police department. I think those were 3 things that were on the table. We've got some cost figures as to what those might look like and what they might mean for fund balances. And then beyond that, we dug in and we looked at some alternatives. So we reached out to various companies to see what would it cost if we wanted to contract this out. Unfortunately, all the firms that we called said they were not interested in contracting for litter pickup. So, I can't say I was overly surprised there. A couple other ideas that don't involve people or adding to the org chart would be to find a way to get a dedicated contract with adult probation. I've reached out to them. I haven't gotten an answer back. I know some of you on the board may have may have some personal connections over there, so that may be something worth exploring to see if adult probation would be interested in some sort of long-term agreement that could be a win-win-win. So potentially cheaper than adding people, but also resulting in dedicated, structured pickup along the corridors. Another option, which was actually a thought of Jackie O'Connell, which kind of gets back to something you brought up earlier today, Raj, or I think it might have been you, Raj, with the CCA yard, or the CCA getting an award for Adopt a Highway. We could think about doing something like that for Colerain streets. So we could, have adopt a township road or adopt a street in Colerain. We could offer to provide all the equipment that you might need to whatever that group is. They could get a little sign that says this stretch of roadway is maintained by, whether it's, Scout Troop X or, Community Group Y. If you're organized and you commit to doing it, that could be a very cheap alternative as well to, not have to deal with hiring people. I say all this because the cost of adding people, it's not cheap. So if you were to look at hiring some individuals to do litter abatement, so just going out and picking up materials every day that they were in the office, it would run about $40,000 a year if you were to hire 2 people. What that means is if we were looking at using existing resources, one of the things that we were asked to do was to look at the recycle fund. As it stands, the recycle fund brings in about $50K of revenue a year. About $10K of that gets spent on recycle day. The remainder of that would then be completely eaten up by litter pickup crews. So why I bring that up is in the past we've been able to use recycle funds for a number of other things. Recarpeting in the senior center with recycled carpet. We've been able to look at it for additional things at our parks. So for example, we were able to buy recycled, benches and things like that and tables for Clifford Park this past year. We've also got things that are important for next year's budget cycle, some additional amenities that we could put in at Colerain Park, same sort of deal, benches, tables, things like that. So, if we're looking at recycled dollars, if we were to add staff, it would basically commit those dollars at that time to being solely dedicated to recycle day and then having litter pickup. If we wanted to consider some of the other alternatives, such as an additional code enforcement individual, we would probably have to cover that expense out of the general fund, transferring that to the planning fund like we do every year. And if we were to look at doing the environmental crimes person and police, depending on the influx with DEA funds, we might be able to find creative ways to offset some of that salary expense and things like that. So these are some of the options that are out there, and I think we want guidance from you all if you're looking to add positions to the org chart, whether that is at the next meeting, whether it's part of the 2021 budget or something different.
Thank you, Jeff, for your work on that. I was out along one of the on-ramps on 275, and I noticed a company called Merkel Lawn Care was out picking up litter. I don't know if they're contracted by ODOT, so maybe that's somebody you could reach out to or contact ODOT and see if they actually do that.
Merkel might be the only one that I gave the parameters of what we were looking to, but they haven't responded yet. That was probably about a week and a half ago.
Yeah, I was going to say, I
with
was getting on one of the on-ramps and I saw them out there. Through the recycling dollars, I think we've heard enough from the community. I figure out what it would cost to just have a little hit team that we could send out to do pickups. Just today go tackle that Galbraith Road from Colerain to Cheviot Road, and tomorrow go do Pippin Road from here to there, because it's been pretty loud and clear that people are becoming tired of the litter. And once again, I would just reach out to the people in our community. The ones that are doing this are probably not watching this meeting, but please quit throwing stuff all over the place. I went out and did another pickup just from the library on Galbraith to Colerain and Galbraith and up towards US Bank, and it's just amazing the amount of stuff people just chuck out of their cars. And it's the same place where you and I were 2 months ago.
Yeah.
And it just keeps happening. And I don't understand I think I do, but I don't understand what's going on in society that people think the world is a wastebasket. So that would be my advice, is see what Merkel's doing and take a look at just hiring a couple part-time people that we could just send out and have them pick up stuff. But I'd sure like to hear what the other two trustees have to say.
So to respond to that, just real briefly, one of the difficulties we've actually had 2 open positions at our community center for event attendant for what feels like the entire time I've been at Colerain Township. And in fact, it probably has. What we were told, part of the reason that that's hard to fill is the inconsistency of hours as well as the timing of hours. Put aside the timing of hours because that's not necessarily something here. If we're wanting to make sure that we get individuals that will come in the door and will be dedicated to cleaning these up, we probably need to guarantee a certain number of hours on a weekly basis. And as I'm looking at the math, if you're talking 2 people, that's going to run you about $40K a year, not counting any startup costs for if they need vehicles or things like that to be able to travel to and from job sites. So, you know, $40K a year, if you're saying recycle fund, yes, that's basically saying to just, that's what our recycle dollars go to, so.
Yeah, look into that. I don't know, what do you have to say, Matt or Raj?
Yeah, sure.
Mike?
Jeff. We talked about this. I mentioned earlier. I also mentioned to Jeff Mills the other day. Maybe have a meeting with the Justin Camp, who is in charge of the Colerain Avenue. I told him about this program. He's going to pay that the company will pick up the litter to pick up Colerain Avenue, and also like you also have some money that you can spend. We can come up with a plan how we can make like a target all Colerain Avenue. Also be involved, like Matt mentioned about long few months. The business also how we make the business liable, because we see a lot of. I saw today in front of the McDonald's near the Northgate Mall, a lot of trash. So we need to aggressively send in the letters and enforce the business, the liability, which Matt suggested. And we can do that. I think it has to be very cooperative. The people all fired up. People are really coming out. They're really cleaning up. And when they see this, we are moving forward the direction. It'll be fantastic, And also, I talked to you, we got about $10,000 that environmental protection, if we come up with some recycling program. I think October 31st is the last day. I'm still working on it. We get the $10,000 grant from EP, county environmental agency. They'll add up a little bit. I think, like you said, about 21 will be like what you said, 3 words you used?
Clean, green, and prosperous.
Yeah, I think we can do it. We'll take a step further.
Could I try to segment this into 2 sets of questions? The one set of questions would be about litter pickup and whether or not you want us to hire 1, 2, or no part-time employees. And then the other set of questions relates to commercial dumping.
Yeah.
Whether you want us to pursue part-time code enforcement or the environmental crimes task force, an additional police officer that serves as the deputy peak for Colerain Township. So if we could get clarity on those 2 issues, then we could bring back something substantive for you to vote on at the next meeting.
And wasn't there discussion about there be a 1-year grant to pay for that environmental crimes person?
So yes, so we have one of the funds that we have available to the police department is the Law Enforcement Trust. Is that the correct fund? Yes.
Yeah, it's the DEA asset forfeiture dollars from drug arrest and things like that.
That's right. So we have a police officer who is detailed to the Drug Enforcement Agency. Most of his time is spent down at the airport, and he seizes drugs and money that is used to purchase drugs or sell from proceeds of sale of drugs. That is seized by the DEA, and we get a percentage of the money that he seizes. That goes into this fund that has a restricted set of uses. One of those uses is the first year salary of a police officer. So one thing that we could do to make this as revenue neutral or budget neutral as possible is hire a new police officer, make him the environmental crimes task force police officer. In year 1, pay for him out of DEA. In year 2, new police officer moves to the police fund, and the DEA officer moves into the law enforcement trust fund. So in that way, there would be no net decrease in the police fund that is under pressure and in need of a levy in the next some amount of years.
Right, great, yeah.
So-
It's good.
And then going back to the probation, if you had, and I don't know if you can pick out who they send out, you would know that, Raj, but
Yeah,
if you had nonviolent probationers,
Yeah, they are usually, people do the community service program, and they are nonviolent. The judges order them, most of their misdemeanors, they're not violent offenders. And I spoke to Jody Lees, she's in charge now of the program. She's going to put, at least I come once a week, send the probation. Right now, what they're struggling is the employee. They got only one crew supervisor. They plan to hire. If anybody wants a job, the county's looking for a job. 2 crew supervisors, easy job. You can apply for it right now. But right now she's going to send it
so
once a week.
if we used probationers, we would have to have a crew supervisor, and that would have
Yeah,
to be
yeah.
a county employee.
Yeah. The county, they drive them in a van. They leave downtown. They all meet in the downtown. They leave 7:30. They assign the spot. The crew supervisor will be watching them. He'll be there. They're not leave that probationers there and take off, but they watch them. So it's a great program. I think you already talked to Jody.
I haven't gotten a call back from her, so I've got to call into her in a voicemail. with
Yeah,
her.
sure. She's very good.
So,
She's also a Sims Township trustee.
yeah, and I offered that option as a potential innovative solution because I don't know that, having a dedicated contract with your local adult probation is something that is really done throughout the country. It could have been a neat new thing that if we're able to make that happen would really show that, we're finding a way to do things more effectively and efficiently, utilizing resources that are already existing. And so to the extent that I'm able to make contact with Jody, I would like to continue to explore that option, but that doesn't mean that something will come to fruition because sometimes things get bogged down in the X's and O's of contracts.
So a couple things I want to weigh in, and I agree with Raj kind of set this up a little bit with, I don't look at this as one solution, it's a series of solutions, and I want to keep pursuing all of them. The dedicated contract is an outside-the-box idea. I do think we should hire 2 for litter abatement, and we work through the recycle fund when we can, to the extent to which we can. I know that it's got a positive surplus now, and I'm not saying that in the future that we don't push it to another fund. I do think the Adopt a Highway is a great idea, but I think that what makes this kind of multifaceted solution such an intriguing thing is that we're not going to like the Colerain chamber and saying, hey, clean up our roads. We're going to them and saying, look, we got individuals out there, we've got trustees out there cleaning up stuff. We've got, we've hired people with a recycle fund. Can you help be part of this solution? And I think that it gets easier buy-in that way for Adopt a Highway. What they do down at the, I forget the name of the nursery that did the Ronald Reagan, but that looks fantastic. I mean, I'm noticing this wherever I go now. I notice this more. People's exit ramps, I stop and take pictures. It's kind of bizarre, but Grove City in Columbus has the most extensive amount of exits. They have it built up with like white picket fences and stuff. It's bizarre, but like Mason is overgrown. So my kind of recommendation is to pursue this, hiring the 2 litter abatement people, and I do agree with you. We need to have them make sure they have hours. I think the biggest issue is going to be weather-related stuff. What do we do with them if they're not picking up trash and it's 8 inches of snow? Is there a different thing we could use with them for? And I like environmental police if we can do that. I certainly want somebody different, another case enforcement person. I think if it's police and they have a badge, I think that discussion's a lot easier. And we're not putting people in a position where, code maintenance where they have to try to be a police officer and they really puts them in an awkward position. So my answer is yes to litter, the 2 litter people. Yes, keep exploring environmental police. Yes, if CCA, and especially if we can bring stuff to the table and say, look at what we've done so far.
And I would concur with the hiring a couple part-time litter pickup folks to figure that out. But at the same time, I want to make sure that they are dedicated to that and they don't get pulled off in some other direction. Hey, we could use you to do this today. I mean, they need to be out picking up litter. There's just a lot of it. And I think that over the course of a month, they could make a real impact, because I've noticed some of the places I've participated in cleaning, they tend to stay clean after you clean them. And then if you go back a week later, there's just a couple things, and so that would be my direction. Raj, did you have other comments?
No.
If I just say one
I
other
think,
thing. Oh, go ahead.
sorry, Matt. I think we all three trustees in this issue, we're on the same page. They each have passion for keep our township clean. And there's a lot of people coming forward, have a pride in the place they live. And there are some evil people out there, they, throw the trash, no pride for the place where we live. But we have our duty to do, and this issue, I think everyone, Dane is cleaning, and Matt also, we hands-on job we were doing. All the plan you're suggesting sounds good, let's move forward.
Okay, so to clarify, does that mean, I know you said yes to like an environmental police officer. Is that where you are as well?
I'll go forward.
Okay.
And then, is it fair, can we include this in our 2021 strategic plan and budget so that we can make the org chart amendment in the strategic plan and budget for it for next year, rather than changing our appropriations for?
I'm a now, sorry.
So another thing to consider is the hiring process. The quickest we've seen anybody hired is 90 days.
Great.
So we could post for these, they could be included with everything, and then we wouldn't necessarily have to make an appropriations change today, because odds are they're not going to be on board before January 1st, just with timelines.
And if that plays out that way, we're talking about a time period where we've got weather issues, and I just, when January rolls around, I want to be on the cusp of pushing this out. The other thing I wanted to bring up too is, and I don't know how we do this, gently push, but the county bears a responsibility in this too. I want to go to them and say, look, I think Raj mentioned he's got somebody for Colerain or Colerain Avenue or the corridor. I want to keep pushing them to take care of their stuff too.
Sure.
I mean, we've got people out on Pippin, and not only is that dangerous, but also it's a county responsibility as far as
I believe
Matt, I
citizen
totally
comment
agree.
at their meetings, but I could be mistaken on
What's
that.
that?
I believe the county has citizen comment at their meetings, but I could be
Right,
mistaken.
yeah, like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, yeah.
Yep.
So I'm meeting with the county engineers also next week. This one other topic that I'm going to bring it to them. We got a new county engineer, he's pretty good. So let's get that like a group of people all the same, they're all stakeholders in this project. So we'll bring them all on the board.
So at the next meeting, I guess what I'm hearing is you would like to see a job description, resolution amending the org chart, and increase appropriations to support all three of these positions, right?
Just to throw a number out there, 2 part-timers at
Okay.
how many hours a week?
We had budgeted 20. But
20 apiece, or?
20 apiece, yeah. But it's, in January, it's going to be hard to, yeah.
It may be hard to find somebody that wants to only work 10 hours a week, because that was kind of the number of hours that they would have gotten.
Oh, it was 20 for each of them, or 20
20
for?
for each of them. We were budgeting 20 for each of them.
40 total
Right.
between the two.
Well, I mean, would that be 3 days or 2 days?
It could be 4 days at 5 hours if that was how it was split up, and you could have them on alternating days so that they're not all there at the same time, or alternating
Okay,
time frames.
that's
So
fine. And then the environmental investigator, police officer that's paid for out of those other funds, I'd be in favor of that also.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Weckbach.
Next item, discussion of 2021 economic development.
Yes, sir. At our last meeting, board, you challenged us to find a way to add resources to our economic development efforts. So find a way to add people and dedicated staff, and from what I understand, you
An
to
existing,
yeah, without hiring anybody new. And so And so we were up to the challenge. We went back and we looked at different ways that we could add capacity for economic development. And I propose that in 2021, in keeping with what I'm hearing you guys continue to say, things like clean, green, and prosperous, the prosperous portion of our big theme for 2021 would encompass a new way to do economic development. And I propose that we would stand up a new department called the Department of Development and staff that with 2 individuals, sort of, I don't know the exact titles yet, but maybe it's Senior Development Officer and Development Officer. They would report to the Director of Economic Development, that's me, and they would, so there would be a Department of Development dedicated to achieving our economic development goals. Those 2 individuals would stand up a new department. Our planning department would stand down to 2 roles. So the 2 FTEs would transfer from the planning department to the development department. And the planning department would then look like a director who would be responsible for current planning, that's permits, and all the zoning commission and BZA work. And then that person would also continue to lead the code enforcement team. So we'd have a planning department with a director, a code enforcement full-time and 2 part-time, and then a development department with a senior development officer and a development officer. And in that way, it would be budget neutral. We'd be able to focus on things like, in the first 3 months, a strategic economic development plan and all of the work that we've been asked to do with, for example, respect to TIFs. We need to make a major push in 2021 with respect to the mall. We hear that loud and clear. We've worked all of our local resources, and nobody has expressed an interest to take on such a big project. We need to go regional, if not national, with looking for developers that are interested in a project like the Northgate Mall redevelopment. We need to, as Mr. Waller just pointed out, have a sites inventory. We need to have all of our sites available and up on the web in some inventory fashion. All this requires significant work. We need to do business attraction, business retention, and real estate development. All of those tasks would be accomplished by the new Department of Development, and again, it would be at no additional cost to the township. So we believe that by reconfiguring the resources we have, we can achieve the goals that you challenged us to achieve at the last meeting.
I would add to that, Mr. Mills, and I don't know to the extent that we've used this before, but we're on the cusp of doing some new things that we take advantage of. UCXU, NKU, even Miami's internship programs, because in North College Hill we use them to, when they sniff a new project, then you start getting them to come out.
Yep.
Because that's real world experience for them,
Absolutely.
and they don't cost us anything.
Yeah, a small amount, yeah.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Right, totally. Absolutely. We've had great success with co-ops in the past, and I would love to continue to do that. But if that sounds like...
It sounds like what we asked you to do.
Okay. If that sounds like we hit the target, then what we will do, I anticipate, because the planning department has just been going gangbusters this year with incredible projects. They've done an outstanding job under the leadership of Mike Iona with achieving those initiatives that we set out to achieve at the beginning of the year, including the comprehensive plan. That comprehensive plan is set to hopefully wrap up at the end of this year. Once that comprehensive planning project wraps up at the end of December, that makes the most sense in terms of the reorganization. And I think that we would probably accomplish it through the strategic plan and budgeting process. So my anticipated start date for this reorganization would be January 1st, 2021. And we would approve that reorganization in the strategic planning approval process.
One last question, I think that so everybody knows we're on the same page. When we talk about economic development, yeah, we're talking commercial property. We're also talking residential, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, if that's the direction of the board, if you say, Jeff and team, go get me X, Y, and Z. I want to see mixed use. I want to see single family. I want to see whatever you want to see. Yeah, that residential is absolutely a component of economic development. Okay.
Thank you.
Good. Okay. So if there aren't any other questions there, we have a consent agenda this evening. First item on the consent agenda is a contract that I signed with Cellusite for maintenance of a cellular facility in the township. The next item is a contract with Infinity HR. We talked about this a little bit earlier, but Infinity HR, this is a $500 addition to our existing contract that allows us to complete onboarding paperwork remotely and collect electronic signatures on HR information, which is important in a time of COVID. The next item on the agenda is a contract that I signed with HealthWorks for biometric screening and flu shot for employees. It should be at no cost to the township, but if for some reason less than 8 employees show up, then it would cost $200. We anticipate great participation in that program, making it free. Next item on the agenda is a contract with Council on Aging, amending our senior meal contract. As you can imagine, there's been great demand for Meals on Wheels, given that our congregate feeding programs have had to stop due to COVID. So we amended our contract with Council on Aging. And then the last 2 items are new hires in the fire department. Item E is the authorizing the hire of 8 part-time firefighter paramedics: Stephen Baldoff, Brandon Barnes, Kevin Casey, Charles Collins, Eric Hotap, Ryan Smith, Joseph Stoyer, and Nolan Thorner. The wage for these jobs are $14.50 per hour, and contingent upon board approval, these part-time employees would be eligible to begin work on October 18th, 2020.
Do they serve a 1-year probation?
Part-timers
Yeah, I think so.
serve a 1-year probation. Those new hire authorization forms are included in the packet. And then finally, a new hire for a fleet mechanic co-op in the Department of Fire and EMS. This gentleman's name is
Austin Fisher.
Austin Fisher. The idea is that Mr. Fisher would be employed at a maximum number of hours of 30 hours per week at an hourly rate of $12 per hour, with eligible start date of October 18th, and he would serve a 1-year probation as well. The recommendation is to adopt the consent agenda.
I will move to adopt items A through F as provided. I don't need to name the employees, do I, or? No. Okay, A through F is provided in the consent items.
I will second that. It's been motioned and seconded. Is there any discussion? The cellular contract is for the tower that is behind the firehouse on Thompson Road.
That's correct.
And there's no cost with that. We're just allowing them to come on the property.
That's correct.
And that's what the contract is for. The full text of it is contained in our agenda for this meeting. It's got drawings, and it just says they're going to be on the property to maintain it. And I didn't have any other items. Did you have anything on that, Raj?
Thanks, Dan. I really appreciate that we keep the senior citizens meal program. That shows we really care for these people, and it's a great program. And we helped a lot during the COVID started. We continue to help in the senior citizens.
Absolutely, and Bud continues to drive folks around and pick up groceries for them. And
Good program.
Yeah, thank you.
Was there any other discussion?
Nothing.
Hearing none, Mr. Baker, please call for a vote.
Mr. Rajagopal,
Aye.
Mr. Unger,
Aye.
Mr. Waller.
Aye.
The next item is the fiscal office report.
Thank you, Board. Just briefly, we have fulfilled 186 public records requests since April 1st, and we are now down to 20 open public records requests. So we're getting real close. So working hard at it. We should be. I hope to be caught up completely by the end of the year, and that's including the ones we get from now until then, which will be numerous. But that's my goal. So that's all I have.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Is there any need for an executive session?
There is? Yes.
Okay.
Oh, we're gonna have executive sessions?
Yeah, I've got, yes. There's
How long it take?
well, as quick as you guys want it to be.
All right.
Yeah. I can be quick.
Do you want to go ahead and bring forth a motion?
Sure, I recommend that the board go into executive session in accordance with the Ohio Revised Code, Section 121.22G1, to discuss the employment and compensation of public employees. Also in accordance with the Ohio Revised Code, Section 121.22G3, to discuss pending or imminent litigation with the township attorney. Also in accordance with the Ohio Revised Code, Section 121.22G4, to discuss collective bargaining sessions with public employees concerning their compensation, and also in accordance with the Ohio Revised Code, Section 121.22G8, to consider confidential information relating to specific business strategy to discuss negotiations with other political subdivisions respecting requests for economic development assistance.
I would motion that we go into executive session for those reasons.
I second it.
It's been motioned and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Baker, please call for a vote.
Mr. Rajagopal?
Aye.
Mr. Unger?
Aye.
Mr. Waller?
Aye.
And do you anticipate there'd be any action taken?
No, I do
Okay.
not.
So stay tuned, and we will come back to adjourn the meeting when we're done with executive session. We have returned from executive session at 11:10 PM. Mr. Baker, would you please call the attendance roll?
Mr. Rajagopal?
Here,
Mr. Unger?
Here.
Mr. Waller?
Here.
Mr. Mills, is there anything to report from executive session?
No, sir.
The next agenda item is adjournment. Do I have a motion for adjournment?
yes.
Second.
It's motioned by Raj, seconded by Matt. Any discussion?
No,
Hearing none, Mr. Baker, please call for call the roll for a vote for adjournment.
Mr. Rajagopal?
yes.
Mr. Unger?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes.
This meeting of the Colerain Township Board of Trustees is adjourned at 11:10 PM
Right.
on October 13th, 2020. Thank you for watching.